quorum. I will go ahead and call this meeting of the school committee together and to order at 6:05 p.m. on June 11th, 2024. I will just read through our agenda. So we will begin with public comment and then move to the superintendent, chair, and student remarks, and then move to the consent agenda, which has a number of items on it, including minutes, $200 donation from Student Civics Action Project to the Whitsons to reduce cafeteria waste, consideration of acceptance of $14,950 of grants from the Winchester Foundation for Educational Excellence, consideration of approval of the 2024-25 McCall Program of Studies, and approval of the 24-25 handbooks, and approval of several health services policies. Then we'll move on to report, update, and action items, including a year-end report from the Winchester Parent Advisory Council, WinPAC, and then consideration of approval of the Assistant Director of Special Education out-of-district coordinator position, a finance and operations update from Mr. Marin, consideration of approval of the summer 2025 and 2024-2025 school year meeting dates, the school facilities project updates, and then followed by anticipated future agenda items, future meeting dates, and adjournment. So with that, I will move on to public comment, and just the usual prelude. Public comment shall be for a period of 20 minutes. Any citizen or resident wishing to speak before the committee shall identify themselves by name and address and shall speak for no longer than 3 minutes. No citizen may speak more than once without permission of the chair, and it's not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the committee, but it is the citizens' opportunity to express their opinion on issues that are coming before the school committee. So I believe I saw somebody, Dr. Stott, sign in for public comment.
It's very nice to see everyone. Thank
Oh,
you.
and I just might interject one thing. Mr. Matthews is joining us, Dr. Matthews is joining us by audio, by Zoom.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to offer public comment. My name is Shannon Stott. I'm at 32 Pilgrim Drive. I'm speaking today as a member of WinPAC who's been asked by a parent of a special education child in the district to read a public comment on their behalf that's concerning the vote that will be coming up today about the change in the out-of-district coordinator position. So I'd like to now read the comment that was prepared by this person. So yesterday, Dr. Hackett and Dr. Elna attended the monthly WinPAC meeting and announced a plan to change the posted out-of-district coordinator position to an assistant director of special education and out-of-district coordinator position. The OOD is a niche role, and to do it well, it is very time-consuming. It requires detailed knowledge of programs which change dramatically based on the students enrolled in those programs. Determining an appropriate placement is often dependent on the cohort in any program at any time. Another significant part of the OOD role is developing relationships with the admissions and service providers at all of these schools. Many of these schools are full, and there are significant wait lists. Most IEP files of the students that are candidates for OOD placements do not accurately represent the students' needs. Most students that are not referred to OOD placements have very complex needs that can't be understood or addressed by the district IEP teams. In order for a student to gain access to these schools, advocacy and relationships are the key to entry, since the paper trail does not provide a full picture. My son was referred by his IEP team for an extended evaluation, EE, and an OOD placement. For 3 months, I called, emailed, visited, scheduled interviews and observations. I could not visit some schools because Winchester Public Schools had not sent the referral packet. Much time was wasted as the packets were not sent in a timely fashion or follow-up on submissions did not happen. Things change quickly with these placements, and work must be done to get on wait lists and determine if a placement is appropriate. I estimate that I spent at least 20 hours per week since March working to find an appropriate placement for my son. This is one placement for one student. Last week, my son was admitted to a school only because my educational advocate previously worked at the school and used her personal relationship to gain access to an interview. Without this relationship, my child would still be suffering in his general education classroom, from which he was suspended 3 times this year. Our family was told that we could not work with the Winchester Public School OOD coordinator. I do not know if this was a trial for this type of hybrid role that is being proposed. If so, then I can assure you that the trial failed. I implore the school committee to consider and ask the following questions to inform your voting this evening. For the past 3 to 4 years, how many OOD placements have been approved? What is the proposed number for placements next year? Unless there's a projected 50% reduction, I question how this role can be reduced in half or more. If the new role was created to attract more candidates, what other strategies were used to attract quality candidates? Passive recruiting, reaching out to MAAPS members? And what else about the role could have been changed? Perhaps the qualifications. Is DESE teaching certification required for a non-teaching role? Do families in the district with current OOD placements feel adequately supported? In a recent letter regarding the budget, Dr. Hackett offered a prediction concerning OOD placements. Quote, "The overall growth of the OOD placements has generally abated, and we are currently projecting fewer OOD placements for the 24-25 school year. While this number can change at any time, we are cautiously optimistic that we are experiencing a flattening of OOD enrollment. Unfortunately, we've been negatively affected by the state-sanctioned 14% increase in tuition costs for the current year and another 4.69% for fiscal year 25. As a parent of a special education student that will likely need an OOD district placement in the 24-25 school year, I am worried about this prediction. The decision to provide access to these much-needed programs cannot be based on the budget, but on the need of our students." Thank you very much for the time that the school committee has given me to read that full statement.
Can I ask a clarification for Dr. Stott?
Yes, you may.
That the parent, I don't think you identified.
I did not identify. I
And
kept
the
the parent
parent
anonymous.
chooses not to be identified, is that right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else for public comment? Seeing that we have none. Yes, Mr.
Point of-
Nixon?
Just a point of order. I appreciate what Dr. Stott just shared. When parents share with us anecdotes about their family and their child, and they identify themselves, we have, let's say, a bolus of information. And in those conversations with families, we can understand explicitly from them what it is they're comfortable with us following up on. FERPA is an important firewall. It's federal law. So none of us, having just heard that statement, can go to Dr. Elenema, Ms. Kirby, or Dr. Hackett and say, tell me more. So that's important federal privacy law. If that parent wishes to reach out to school committee members to share more information and identify themselves, they need to do that. So I appreciate the statement, but my hands are tied by it, I feel. Not entirely. There were some sort of policy questions in there. So I just want to be sure that the public understands that. So we have a very careful lane we sort of have to be in. That was all.
I think
Thank
the
you.
district has a lane they have to be in with that information too, don't they, Dr. Elenema, that, like, even if somebody might know who that is, you can't identify that person to other people either.
Right, I can talk processes and in general, how we approach things, but not about that
Specific student, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will close public comment, and we will move ahead to superintendent, chair, and student remarks. Dr. Hackett.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Welcome to our students who, this is officially your last school committee meeting, right?
This year, yeah.
Well, for this year.
Yeah, of this year. That's what I mean, yeah. We do celebrate that. So I have just a few things, a couple of slides. Just want to give you a couple of updates. The items under 2 are a little bit, 3 are a little bit out of order for me. If it's okay with the chair, I would just go through the items that I have. So if we could just skip the subcommittee reassignments, and I'll talk about Chapter 70 literacy, and I also have just a brief update on standards-based reporting. So Andrew, if you could just take me to slide, thank you. So the elementary literacy study is it's winding down and winding up, I guess is probably the best way to say it. The design team is scheduled to meet for the seventh time this Thursday on the 13th. Presumably, unless something changes, that would be the final meeting of the design team. They've been presented with some high-level data and information at their last meeting. They'll see additional information on the 7th and likely potentially a draft report from the collaborative for feedback. And the collaborative has been scheduled to present to the school committee at your meeting on June 25th, and that is a 9:30 a.m. meeting. That is here in person, so we'll put that out to the community. I would just remind everybody that link brings up that webpage, and the updates it has been updated pretty regularly. So you could see the notes from the first 6 meetings under the design team link. So we're wrapping up. It's good to hear that the collaborative will be able to present a report to the committee by the end of the month, fiscal year anyway. Because if you recall, there was some concern that just the amount of it and whether they would be able to produce that. So that will be presented on the 25th. And we will make sure people know that that's on the agenda. We would love to keep the agenda kind of just to that purpose, but unfortunately, the work continues and we have other stuff that we're going to need to include. So if you go to the next slide, please. So just a quick update, this is not finalized yet, but the Chapter 70 funds, currently the Senate final versus House amount of money for Winchester has gone up an additional $46,076. So just taking you from left to right, the Chapter 24 current year aid is $10.2 million. The governor's budget, the House 1 budget, had a $30 per pupil, which, again, we only get the minimum per pupil allocation because of our financial status. And that was $30 per pupil. Then the Senate, the House Senate Ways and Means announced that we'll be raising it to $104 per pupil. That was the number that Senator Lewis spoke to town meeting about. The $10.7 million, which was an additional $451,984, and then it went to the most recent version went to $110 per pupil. So we are currently we would be slated if the budget goes through the final process and is approved, the town will be receiving an additional almost $500,000 in Chapter 70 funding. So that's all good news. And just wanted to share that with you, so hopefully that will come to pass.
But
So
only after the governor signs it.
only after the governor signs it, it has to, the bill has to become a
Not just
law.
House and Senate, yep.
Just like that cartoon.
And I just wanted to interject that I just wanted to express our appreciation to Ms. Bergstrom, whose sharp ears at the MASC Day on the Hill meeting helped alert us, I think. So thank you very much.
Sure. And I would also add, Dr. Hackett, the House and Senate is really committed to this because they've heard from MASC and from superintendents, MASs, that Chapter 70 is not keeping pace with inflation, and that the Fair Share Amendment was, one of its purposes was to fund public education. So they are really, I think, trying to make a good faith effort at getting closer to closing the inflation gap in Chapter 70 just statewide. So it not only benefits Winchester, but all districts
Right.
across the state.
Right.
And
Right.
many of them are really, really struggling with
Yep.
their budgets this
Yep.
year.
They absolutely
Millions
are.
of dollars behind, so.
Yep. And overrides going to town vote, and
Yep.
some overrides not passing, so it is welcome news and very helpful. And also
And
just
so
thank you to
we're
our
also-
legislative delegation as well.
Also thankful to the town of Winchester for acknowledging that we are getting that additional funding and helping us get our budget through where other districts are really struggling.
Absolutely. And then just finally, if you recall, a few months ago, McCall had put out a survey to parents, students, and teachers about standards-based reporting. Those results came in, they were shared with the curriculum subcommittee. There was a pretty overwhelming parent response that was not as positive as we would have liked to have been, but it was the parents who took that survey at that time were not pleased with how the rollout went. We got a lot of feedback, and we learned a lot of lessons as a result of that. But what we didn't really learn is what is it that is really creating that feeling with parents, because the curriculum subcommittee also heard from our grade 6 teachers who had a lot of really very positive things to say about standards-based reporting and about the effect on kids that was really did not align with the data that was collected, that we collected as a district from the parent community. So we are going to be going into year 3 of the grade 6 pilot next year. We're expanding to include the I always forget what we call them. They're not
They're the electives at the exploratories. is what we call them
exploratories,
at McCall.
right. So the exploratories will be included in the standards-based reporting for next year for grade 6. We're not going any further than grade 6. We're going to go through this pilot year, but as we go into the pilot year, we obviously want to try to improve where we can and better understand the feedback that we've got. So we did partner with UMass Amherst. They have been working with us and have given us a couple of researchers who have been holding focus group sessions. They've held them with both students. They've held them with community member, with parents. As importantly, we really wanted them to also get out to our elementary schools so that they could meet with parents at the school, just because we felt it was more accessible, more comfortable for parents to come in person at the school that their child is at currently, as opposed to coming into the middle school. And we've also, they also conducted 2 Zoom family sessions. So as of the 6th of June, and the data collection continues, but as of 6th of June, you can see the different stakeholder groups that were spoken to or spoken with. The total number of students so far is 70. Total teachers is 22. That would include grade 5 teachers as well. Total family members, 34, with a total of sessions overall of 16. So there'll be some additional data collection happening over the course of the next couple of weeks. And then they will be looking at the data and working with us administratively to kind of try to make sense of what we have, and also think about what other steps might we want to take depending on what we get for information, and how useful the feedback is for us and informative, so that we can really better understand the results of the survey that we conducted, which by all counts was, we're not psychometricians, so we felt it was really important to go deeper on this question. So I just wanted to give you an update about that, and I will come back to you probably either before, depending on where you land on your summer meeting schedule, either prior to the start of the school year or first meeting in September, so that you can have some results of that, and we can talk about kind of our implications of that. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, or Ms. Bergstrom was.
I was just going to say, one question that came out of curriculum subcommittee that we had talked about was that we recognized that maybe the communication on the front end of this wasn't exactly what anybody had as their goal. How is that communication plan going to change moving forward for upcoming 5th grade parents, besides just the focus groups? Is there going to be some kind of information going out to 5th grade parents explaining that this is the grading at 6th grade? Do we know anything about that yet, or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we 5th grade parents will be tied into this discussion. They'll be tied into, and we really wanted to also talk to them on the front end of this in the focus group sessions, because as you know, they're experiencing standards-based grading at the elementary level right now.
Right.
So that's helpful as part of the transition, getting the information from them as to what the concerns were, what the positives were, whatever it is that they ended up sharing. will help also us in terms of that communication out to fifth grade families. So, but we will be, I'm not sure if we haven't already sent anything to fifth grade parents, but we will be sending something before the end of the school year.
Before the end of the
It'll be
school
part of the fifth grade transition to sixth grade.
And the only other highlight that came out of curriculum subcommittee around sort of the parent input was there seemed to be a disconnect between the parent sort of understanding of, we understand what an A is, we don't understand what meets is. Is part of that communication sort of going to be to help them understand the grading scale too, and how they know how their students are doing in school? Is there any like kind of parent education around
Yes.
it, I guess?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
I guess I would just chime in and say, not having sat through the subcommittee meeting, but I appreciate that we're going deeper into this because it's obviously an area of great concern for a lot of parents, and the difference that you point out is quite stark, and so understanding that, as Ms. Bergstrom says, maybe a lot of it's communications, which would be good. But I do look forward to seeing the output from the researchers. I think having that data will be great.
And it is interesting because the teachers are super excited.
They
about
were
it.
very positive.
excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very positive, so. we've
Difference
got-
in student outcomes we're seeing
Right.
and all kinds of things.
Communication
around
with students and.
students seeing themselves as learners.
So clearly, there's a gap.
Yeah.
And, we need to figure out what we can do to help to fill that. And, as we've said from the beginning of this, that this has been a pilot. We're going to the year 3 of the pilot. It truly is a pilot, and we want that feedback to get better, make decisions about where we're going to move, how we're going to move forward with it at grade 6 and what it looks like. And, we just have a lot of work to do. So hopefully, we can have that information and really better understand what it is that we should be communicating, what people really are missing from what we've put out there so far. So,
Can I make an observation? And sort of a question/suggestion. So I'm presuming Aspen still supports standards-based grading in terms of reporting back to parents. So my observation is at McCall Middle School, it can vary, and it varies more year over year, but some teachers use Aspen on a maybe even a daily basis, but very frequently if there's an assignment, a project, whatever, there's a grade, it hits Aspen like within a day or two. But some other teachers, don't update Aspen as frequently. They may hang on to some things, and so that's a conversation with your child. How did you do on this project, that test, what have you? It can be a week, sometimes even 2 weeks before some things are uploaded to Aspen, which maybe for the helicopter parent, or a parent who actually has a real, concern about a child in a certain class, that could be legitimately an issue, right? Because we're sort of hungry for a more kind of current update. My expectation has always been, when there are concerns in the classroom, teachers are reaching out by email. But on top of that, there is some disparity at McCall, and I don't think this is a bad thing. I think I've actually talked to Dr. Elanima about this before, that some teachers in some classes, have their kids use Aspen very frequently to check to be sure assignments have been turned in, grades are posted. Other teachers will say, you don't need to use Aspen, go to Google Classroom for that. I don't think that's bad because it's kind of a reflection of the way the world is, right? I mean, you get to college or professors are going to, post grades differently, have different expectations. But the point is it becomes different and it becomes more different each time you make like that jump at McCall. Having said all that, I'm really interested in understanding how the standards-based grading pilot actually, is it working with Aspen? What's our expectation for our teachers to use Aspen to share that information back to parents, including like how frequently or should they be updating Aspen? And what are our expectations of students? Do we have a district, I should say it that way, is there a district expectation that we have of our students to be using Aspen as a tool, for their executive function just to keep up with what they have? Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but I hope the administrators understand that how Aspen is sort of introduced to students and how it's used really is different class to class. I mean, especially by the time they get to 8th grade. But I think that starts in 6th grade. Dr. Ellen is nodding, so I'm on the right path with this. So I would just like to understand, as much of a change as this is, so how does it work with Aspen? Because that's an important link in our communication back to families.
Tonight or future?
Just have that on the list of things to be looking at. Like you said, we're continuing to
Yep.
gather information.
Yep.
But a part of this, I think, is a conversation for you, Dr. Hackett, to have with Dr. Elenema and others, Mr. Lynn.
Or her to have with me, probably more appropriately, the hierarchy of that discussion. Because Jen has been working with staff on this for quite some time, and was the person who worked with Aspen to get standards-based reporting even to be possible. So, but I appreciate the question, because it should be a tool. I mean, one of the things we've talked about is report cards exist. I feel, this is my own opinion, I feel as though report cards exist primarily as a communication tool
Yes.
to students and parents.
Yeah.
If we didn't need to communicate that, we would probably handle how we talked about student performance among staff very differently. And we do anyway. It would be, because it is more fluid and it's always ongoing. But those marker points where we're reporting on progress is important clearly for parent communication and student communication. It's not the only communication that happens, but it is a benchmark point that is important. So with that, if that is true, and I believe it is, but if that is true, then that's the audience. And if our audience is not understanding what we're sending, or they would have questions about it, or they would like to see changes, or it's not as accessible as they'd like it to be, or whatever the items are, then, we have an obligation to respond to that and try to figure out how to make it better.
I would only add to that list by saying, if the audience gets academic performance information within a day or two, that's a very different experience than having to wait a week or week and a half for 3 or 4 things to hit the Aspen dashboard, depending upon what that information is, when it hits the dashboard. So again, it gets back to what is our expectation as a district of teachers about how they're using it, how frequently they're updating it, because I think if we have a consistent expectation of teachers, that's an easier message than for us to turn around and share with parents about what they can expect, as opposed to go to the open house and teachers have a different message about how they use Aspen. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm just saying they're different right now. And I'm asking, is that okay? And is that what we want?
Well, I think I think another question is, how often do we want students and parents to be going into Aspen to find out how their kid did, right? I mean, because that can also be problematic. And, as we try to address issues like student stress and anxiety, which this is part of this goal with standards-based reporting, we just need to be mindful of, what's the turnover rate on data and how often are people checking, because it's not the only way that students and parents receive communication and information about how their students are doing. So, but we can maybe have a more complete conversation about that at a different meeting.
Yeah, and I think the student experience depends very much on the teacher piece, which is just something to set expectations around that. We would have to work collaboratively with the WEA around expectations for that, which, we're going into negotiations next year, so that may be something that we talk about. But that piece is addressing that first, or talking about that first, because we don't have set expectations for frequency, would then affect the student experience, right? Because if I'm a teacher that's posting all the time, I may be saying to my kids, hop in and take a look at that. But if I'm a teacher, which right now is permissible to do it just in time for the midway through a quarter or trimester for the progress reports, then I'm probably not asking my students to log in and be checking things along the way. So, yeah, and I don't know, personally, I don't have a strong feeling either way, because I think there's pros and cons of each. It is a communication tool, and that can be helpful. And also, students frequently report they'll refresh, which is a stressor and an anxiety about the grade fixation with that piece. So we want them to have regular feedback about where they are and how they're doing. I guess the question is, like, is Aspen the tool for that always, or is it in our classroom practices maybe, so. Or both.
Okay, so that was my 2-minute update on that.
I just wanted to say congratulations to all the seniors from the class of 2024. It's been a very intense week of senior activities, maybe a little bit more than just a week. It was capped off by prom and then graduation last week. And I just want to say good luck in whichever direction that you go. And I do hope that we get to hear more about your adventures collectively down the road. Other than that, other art has been going up around town. I was noticing along the sidewalks that you can see the tiles from the from Winchester Cultural District. They are of artwork by our students. It's quite impressive to see. So, and there are also the kiosks that have gone up, also in an effort with the town of Winchester. So just check those out because you can see some really great work representative of the students here. This is, let's see. I also just wanted to pull this out a little bit in advance because we'll be coming to this later in our meeting under the consent agenda, and wish congratulations to our faculty, Ipshita Chokladar and Lynn Vozella. Sorry. They are the recipients of this year's Sarah Swiger Awards, and those are among the grants that are going to be coming before school committee tonight. So just wanted to recognize the two of them. And this is our last meeting during the school year. So we just wanted to wish all the students and families and staff a very happy and relaxing summer as we roll towards the middle of June. So I think we're already there. Then coming back to, we also had on here the subcommittee reassignments. So in your binders for tonight, you will find a sample copy of a sample 2023-24 list of committees and assignments. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, I plan to, if you could think about some of the committees that you are interested in becoming involved with, I will be reaching out to each of you just to find out what your interest is, what your interests are, and then we will target the 25th to have a first draft of the we will have to have a list of the committee assignments available. And with that, I'll turn it over to our students for any updates. Mahara and Michaela, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I can say it. Thank you, of course, for having us. Ms. Bolognese already touched upon it, but yeah, it's just the end of the year, so we just saw the seniors leave. It's empty. The student parking lot is easier to get out of now. Instead of 20 minutes, I get out in 5. It's lovely.
Until everybody else gets licenses.
Gosh. Well, we get the senior side now, so when it rains, we don't have to, like, walk across, like, the entire thing. Yeah.
It's the little things, isn't it?
It's the little things, you know?
I never knew.
So I actually don't even think we have anything really to share. It just kind of, we're just, like, wrapping up. Do you have anything that you want to share?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're just kind of wrapping up the year. It's just like finals week, and then juniors are asking their teachers for like recs for like college. That's happening now, and then yeah, we're just like a lot of end of the year wrap up like activities. But it's sad to see the seniors go. I don't think we're ready to be like top dogs. Yeah, like.
I do want to add the one thing actually that was in my mind is any parents who don't know, guidance has asked us to fill out forms for their recommendations that they will write for college. So if just parents should be checking like their students' naviances and just making sure that they have submitted all the forms necessary before the end of school. It seems a lot of people have not done that yet, and colleges or the guidance counselors do need that to write your college recs. So that should be done.
Including me, I've not done it.
I do remember a frantic flurry of activity last year, now that you mentioned that.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's,
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's pretty much it from our side.
And will you both be staying with us again next year?
Yes.
Excellent.
We
That's
will
great.
be.
Nice.
We will.
Thank you. And I saw you had mentioned that there are a number of end-of-the-year activities, and we saw one of them as we came into the school building tonight for the softball team, and I know there are many others just going on collectively across the school. So it's like a happy and bittersweet time. So,
Yeah, definitely.
congratulations to all. So,
Can I ask him a question?
yes,
So,
go right ahead.
as you're probably aware, there was this pendulum that swung one direction during COVID with so many colleges and universities stepping away from standardized testing, making test optional, and in some cases, they're even test blind. And now the news over the past month or two is that pendulum is swinging back, and some universities are saying, okay, experiment is over. I don't expect you to know sort of what the test-taking rate is among students for, ACT or SAT, but I'm just curious among kind of the student body here. Do students talk about this? Is this an issue of stress for them? Do you have a sense that, did it kind of change the thinking around standardized testing when some were announcing it was optional? Or did most students just say, I'm still plugging ahead, I'm going to take it anyway? I'm just curious if you have any anecdotes for us.
Sure. I think I was talking to a lot of students, and I think a lot of students feel like they're taking it just to see how they do. But with the test optional, it relieves a lot of stress for them because they're like, oh, I don't have to send it in if I don't need to. So it's kind of going in thinking I'll do my best, but if it doesn't work the way I want it to, then it's not necessary. But I think most students in the high school take it.
Yeah.
I know I took the ACT. Did you take the SAT? SAT, yeah. So from both sides, I think a lot of people just take it to see how they do and then see if they want to submit it. But yeah. Do you have any thoughts you want to add?
Yeah, I think that, I agree with everything that Michaela said. I think that college is becoming test blind. Most of them or a lot of them are blind now. They're not blind, but not requiring through at least class of 2026 and some 2027. And some haven't disclosed how long they're going to maintain that policy. But I know some people who have told me that they're not even going to take the SAT or the ACT at all because they just feel like they don't have the time for it. They want to focus on their grades, or they don't want to be spending hours and hours a week on test prep, spending money on test prep. So I think in that way it was a positive thing for a lot of people that it wasn't this big thing that everyone has to do. Some people, I know someone personally who felt she said, I'm not a good test taker. I know that some people are, and that's great, but it takes me double the amount of time to study for a test that it might take somebody else. So she was like, I'm just going to keep my grades good. I'm going to do my extracurriculars and I'm not going to take it. And I was like, that's great if that's what works for you. And I guess there's also the other spectrum of it where I know there's pressure from people's parents too, who are like, I want you to take the SAT and I want you to submit a 1570 and et cetera. I think there's definitely a wide range of what people are thinking, and I think that schools being test optional did ease some stress, to answer your question.
Oh, the cost of test prep is not anything I mentioned, but I'm glad you did, because it's easily four figures for some families.
It's unbelievable.
And I just hope I hope there continue to be some great options for students, for those schools that actually decide to remain test optional. I so appreciate what you just said, that if students are the ones who are making that choice to focus on grades and extracurriculars and what have you, that's fantastic. I hope those options can remain. So that pendulum is swinging back. It'd just be interesting to see how far back it goes.
It really
For
goes.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask if we would be interested in we have members from WinPAC who are here tonight to introduce their year-end report, and if the committee is in consensus, I'd like to invite them to come up and present to us before we do our consent agenda. Okay.
Thanks for me.
So, just want to Oh, okay, go ahead. We just want to welcome Mr.
I want to
Andy.
turn your Timothy Matthews around
I know.
now, so.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
I don't have my PhD. Sorry. Still studying.
That's right. We want to just welcome Mr. Andy Hollenhurst to speak to us tonight about the end of the year report from WinPAC.
Great.
So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, and actually Shannon and Kate, who I'll introduce on a slide in a second, who are also members of the WinPAC board, are here tonight. So 3 of the 4 official board members are here. We'll have to give Amy Moy, our 4th member, an update. She can watch it on TV. As Karen said, I'm Andy Hollenhorst, so I am the chair of the WinPAC group, which is the Winchester Special Education Parent Advisory Council, otherwise known as CPACs, right? So that's a state-mandated group of parents who advise school committee and district on special matters of special education. We happen to call ours WinPAC because we're Winchester. So we can head to the next slide. So our executive board is myself, Amy Moy, who isn't here tonight, and then Shannon Stott and Kate Messier, who are here tonight. Kate is our newest member, and I want to put the communication out that we would love to have more board members, folks to come help, even if it's just on a project basis, if you have an interest. We will find. We have plenty of work to do and plenty of projects that we like to work on, which I'll reference here in a second. You can go to our website, which is just winchesterpac.org, and then we have a Gmail that is listed on that website, but it's just winparentadvisorycouncil@gmail. So we've been busy this year when we kind of put pen to paper or fingers to slides. We realized quite how many things we've been working on, and a lot of these are sort of current projects. But first and foremost, our role as a parent advisory a group, right, is to advise and to share resources with other parents, and to advocate on behalf of students and families. You heard Shannon be advocating just a few minutes ago. Amy, actually, who's not here, does an incredible job of sharing resources because there's many CPACs around Boston and further afield in the state. There's lots of really great resources, webinars, events that occur online and in person, and Amy does a great job of sharing those on. We have a pretty active Facebook group and other social media accounts. The not in person, because they tend to all be on Zoom, but kind of our anchor of our events is we have monthly meetings that we're pretty proud of. They're open to everybody. We always start out or near the beginning of our meetings with just community discussion. If people have questions or concerns, people are invited to come. We are also very grateful to have attendees from the school committee. Michelle has come, Karen has come, Tom has come, and others, as well as Frank is almost always there, which has been, we're very grateful for that. We know that that's not the case for every CPAC, and it's certainly not a hard requirement, but we appreciate you being there. And then
Feels hard sometimes, if I'm being honest.
That's right. We're a fun group. We like open dialogue.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And Jen has attended many meetings in the past number of months.
6 months of
6
glory.
months.
Yep.
As Heather Geary, as you know, the past director of special education, stepped away, I think, in December. So Jen has been attending our meetings, which has been, again, very grateful for all your attendance and discussion there. Just a few events that kind of occurred in the fall. So every year we have a basic rights webinar. We had that one in November, if I'm remembering correctly. This year, our basic rights webinar was about eligibility within, as it pertains to special education. We also, when Heather was here in last October, we had a meet and greet with not only her with Heather, but with other special education staff, and families could come and ask questions, and it was great. So that was a really nice event. Now that Marlena Isalguez has started, or not has started, will start on. She has attended both our last two WinPAC meetings, not even officially being a July 1st start date yet, which has been great. But we'll that'll be a future goal to continue to partner with Marlena. A few of the other projects we've been working on, this is pretty active, is playgrounds. So not only the Lynch playgrounds, multiple, the WinPAC has given feedback on various plans, right, iterations of these playgrounds, and we've mainly partnered with the Disability Access Commission, or DAC, to give kind of coordinated feedback on not just accessible to the letter of the law playgrounds, but also playgrounds that are inclusive of all players, kids, right, that want to play. So not only just Lynch, but also we've given some feedback on Lincoln, Vincent Owen, even Leonard's Field playground as well. So there's plenty of opportunity there. We've been tracking the district response, right, to the language-based report that came out a couple years ago. Continue to push for takeaways and actions to happen based on that. I mentioned Marlena Isalguez starting as the new special ed director, or the incoming special ed director. I was on the selection committee. I think we can call it the selection committee for that search, as well as the past WinPAC chair, Stacy Irizarry. So that was great to be able to have that opportunity to give feedback, and we're very excited to have Marlena start. Shannon has been WinPAC's kind of representative. She's been part of the literacy design team, so we're excited to hear and to act on whatever outcomes come out of that. And I mentioned partnering with the Disability Access Commission, and we've also been partnered over the year with the Parent Interschool Committee, better known as PISC. I always have to look up what these committees. What the what they mean. I always want to call the DAC the Digital Accessibility Commission, because I work in that field, and so DA means that to me. But I'll come around eventually. So just really quickly on future work, it's also kind of a long list of things that we'd like to continue doing and maybe take a first swing at. So certainly partnering with Marlena as the new as the incoming special ed director. I mentioned the language-based report, right? So to promote the outcomes and the actions that are coming out of that, continuing to work on whatever does come out, and some of the outcomes from the literacy design team. Just in general, that on that sort of advocacy and sharing resources, working with the district to promote communication of resources available, right? Sharing resources via social media channels, via our website. We've even advised some on the district website, right? And how we can kind of share those responsibilities and make sure that folks are receiving a good information. We were thinking of some future potential programming. Actually, Marlena came yesterday. We had a WinPAC meeting, and she came and presented about the new IEP. There's a new IEP form flow that's being unveiled or rolled out across the state this fall. So I think we'll not only, it's great that she came to our meeting, but we'll want to work with Marlena to figure out how we can make that transition an easy one. Also, neuropsych evaluations. We've talked to Jen about coming up with some sort of programming around that, and so we can set good expectations for parents and educators. And also 504 plans can be a little bit confusing, somewhat of a parallel but similar but different, right, to an IEP, so there can be some confusion around that. We'd also love to recognize special ed professionals. Talked about some ideas around that. That might be a project we take up in the fall. And then, just in general, building out our parent network. We have a Google group. We have some other ways to share information more proactively to better assist families with special needs. And that's, I think, the extent of my slides tonight. So thanks for having me. It's been a good year for us, and we look forward to the future.
Just a week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from committee members?
I would just say, thank you to you and the rest of the WinPAC. I think WinPAC is underappreciated resource in our community. It's often hard to have conversation between community members and the district, and I don't mean that sounds worse than I meant, but there's a lot of knowledge that you guys have that a lot of people will just come at us with a lot of things, and they may not understand a process or how something works, and so first they can get a lot of answers to known processes and issues and things right with you guys, and maybe don't have to put in the same level of effort to get that answer because you have that knowledge. And at the same time, while doing that, you start to have a view across a lot of issues. And so you're able to surface things for us that maybe are novel and haven't been addressed yet. And so I think it's, for people who are, that have a challenge or an issue, it strikes me, and you're actively recruiting and you're putting out such a great offer to say, you don't have to run for office. You don't have to even join this and come to every single meeting.
Right.
You can do something on to the extent that that you have the availability, you can engage where it's meaningful for you. And so I think that I don't know that everyone understands that. And so I'm really glad that you're doing that and communicating that out to us.
Yeah, it's tough in the PISC group, which is all the PTA or PTO, right? The parent groups from the different schools. It's tough to elicit volunteers and engagement, right? So for everybody, so to make it a little bit more, chunkable, it's helpful, and I think there's plenty of opportunities, and this is one of the many things, the long list of things we have to work with Marlena on when she starts is opening up those communication channels, right, to relay that information, to get people answers and discussions going ASAP. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Andy, I'm curious, what kind of turnout do you get for your monthly meetings? And they're all in person, I assume.
They're on Zoom, so they're not in person, but we have really good turnout. And in fact, in the last just few months, well, like yesterday, I want to say we had between 15 and 20. Oh, not between 15 and 20, over 20. So really good turnout, not necessarily everyone coming for a full hour, but we tend to have a discussion sort of portion near the beginning. So we've had really good turnout. I think that's one way to, and to the engagement part, right? If we can get folks to come to our meetings and that's something on itself, right?
That's
If
huge,
they hear about a project we're working on, a playground that we're advising on, that's something that they can jump in and jump out on. But that's a good refresher, right? To not have to feel like you're beholden to it, but to be able to engage as much as you'd like.
That's great. No, I didn't realize you were leveraging Zoom for all your meetings. That makes it huge for folks. I was a PAC member for 13 years. And this was before Zoom, at least before we were using Zoom. And it was tough because it was people donating a living room, a kitchen or
Right.
something, and people having to drive across town. And there were times where you might get 6 people to show up, lucky if it was 10. And it was usually kind of maybe folks who were there to really just to discuss one issue passionately. But the consequence is that can kind of maybe drive some parents away who maybe don't share that issue or that
Right.
passion. And so I'm so pleased to know you're able to leverage this. The more parents you're getting, the more they're going to turn and talk to a peer.
Right.
Maybe engage somebody else to come. If you're consistently getting 20 or more, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and on the other side, I think we would like to, we were talking about this summer, maybe having something in person, because we kind of all know each other right from the shoulders up over Zoom. So it's a balance. I think in general, it's much more accessible to have something online where people can, as long as they're available at that time, can come in and engage with it. But also nice to really engage in person too.
Sure.
I just want to add, Andy, that people may not realize that the PACs aren't beholden to open meeting law anymore, which I have noticed a difference in the ability of PAC to connect with parents in the community when they opened that up, because you don't have to have a quorum of your ward per se to hold a meeting, and it takes away from the structured format that we're kind of stuck in at school committee meetings. So it's nice to be able to see the greater opportunity for community discussion and not be so beholden to that structure anymore for PACs. So I'm glad the state made that change, and I think it's been a really
Yeah.
good thing for you guys. And it's nice to see all your work here in one place, because I think sometimes when you go meeting to meeting, you also don't realize how much you've accomplished. And I think you guys should be really proud of the work that you've done this year. And to see it all on one slide like that, it's really a lot of work that you've been having good attendance, but I get the sense that a lot of you are carrying a lot of the work there. So it would be great to see more parents involved in that, and to see all the great things you have going on, and hopefully get better communication out to parents about that, so they can find those entry points, that fit their families and their kids. And to that, my question for you would be, or my challenge, PACs are designed to be advisory to the school committee. So, maybe as you guys do your work over the summer and we do our work over the summer, how can we build that collaboration between the PAC and the school committee to help with communication of events, to help with letting people know about the work that you're doing, and keeping that two-way communication going besides us just attending your meetings? So if you guys, as a board, as an organization, want to think about that and come back to us,
Yeah.
that would be great too.
Be certainly happy to, attend your meetings. We can certainly talk about returning the favor on just meeting attendance, but there's plenty of opportunities, I think, stuff to talk about.
Great,
That's great.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I would say a big thank you. I feel that PAC is a real bridge between the community and the school department. And I just appreciate your service and all the hard work that goes into what you do. So thank you.
Small but mighty team.
That's right.
Is,
Right.
Truly.
and we won't make you sit there for the rest of the
Okay.
meeting.
I give away my
You can be
honorary
Dr.
doctorate.
Timothy Matthews for a meeting, but
Thank you.
May I ask, Madam Chair, before we go to the consent agenda, does Dr. Hackett want to put in a plug for the topping off on Friday?
You will see that in a moment.
Oh, I
Mr.
will.
Nixon.
Where is that on the agenda?
It will be revealed soon.
All will be revealed.
Oh, that's what I was looking
Oh,
for.
Just want to make sure we don't miss it.
It would not be missed. Okay, so moving along to the consent agenda. As we know, members can remove an item from the consent agenda prior to the vote for questions or clarifications. I would say that of most of the items here, we have our minutes, we have some donations that we're accepting. We do have a sizable grant from WIFI for $14,950, related in part to the grants for Lynn Vazella, our nurse leader, and Ipshita Chokladar from our biology faculty. Also Author Fest additional funds, and for second grader take-home math games. So very exciting from them. And then we have the McCall Program of Studies, of which we heard Mr. Lynn, Principal Lynn, came to our last meeting and spoke about that, and the newly developed electives, and the flex block that's incorporating the additional 10 minutes of instructional time next year. We also have consideration of approval of the 2024-25 handbooks, which were also introduced at the last meeting, and of several health service policies, which Ms. Vazella had brought to the policy subcommittee and were reviewed against the MASC policy manual. And then, so all of these are a second reading. So with that, I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can
Aye.
I just make
And
one
then-
acknowledgement before we
Yes.
move on from the consent
Before we,
And
agenda?
then-
before we go,
And Mr.
Mr. Matthews. Ms. Matthews, are you hearing us? Are you able to vote? Oh,
Nope.
he votes yay,
Oh,
like
okay, yay.
but I think,
I say
because he's in
yay.
Spain,
Yes,
so.
thank you. If you guys can hear me, I am a yes on this one.
We can. I'm a little disappointed you do it in Spanish, but that's okay.
Oh,
Next
that's
time,
true.
next time.
I can try C.
Okay, Ms. Bergstrom.
I just wanted to take a moment because after our discussion about the McCall Program of Studies last time, we had a group of students at McCall Middle School whose Civic Action Project was about expanding exploratory choices and thinking about the schedule. And they were super excited to hear that there were actually changes being made. They did not go as far necessarily as maybe the students would have wanted, but they recognized that that's the way that change is made sometimes in small pieces. And I just wanted to recognize Grayson Hurd, Olivia Warner, Ian Blank, Chloe Mackin, and Rayan Habuli, who had emailed the committee and gathered a petition of 160 of their McCall classmates to talk about exploratory change. And they were just super excited about seeing change actually happen. So
That's great.
Thank you.
Civic action projects in action.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And the vote was unanimous on our consent agenda. So with that, we will move into the rest of the report update and action items. The next one of which is consideration of approval of the Assistant Director of Special Education and Out-of-District Coordinator position. This was also a second reading.
So you've had the job description at your last meeting, as the chair just pointed out. And I appreciated the comments, the public comment, and just to, we did talk about this at your last meeting. So I've been here 3 years. This position has been full-time for 2 years, and we've just really struggled to fill it with any level of consistency. We have done quite a bit. I have personally done quite a bit of outreach on trying to find candidates for this position at the various times it's been open over the last 3 years. It is, one of the things that I think, and is that it is such a niche position that when people are in the field of leadership, and if they want to become a special education director or superintendent, or what, imagine that, or whatever it is they might want to do, this position is not as listed as an out-of-district coordinator, doesn't feel like a career builder because it is so specialized around that particular piece of work, which is we certainly agree, critical work, very important work, and work that we've really struggled to do because we just really haven't had that consistency. I would also say, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Alanema or certainly for Marlena, but the focus of this position will always be out-of-district coordination. That will be the focus, and that will be the primary work, because that has to get done. It has to be done well. I think we have a lot of room to grow on providing service, on really communication, with linking back to our SPED supervisors and having those discussions with our SPED supervisors, having that position be a key part of the leadership team has been missing. We would look for that role to really be a key part and understand what's happening within the district across the board. And so we feel like this is our best opportunity to find and to get a pool of applicants that would give us that stability. But I just want to make sure that people understand like, the assistant director piece of this is secondary to the out-of-district coordination piece of this. And what we have seen, what we've experienced, what I've seen since I've been here, and I've seen it elsewhere, is that there are times of the year when an out-of-district coordinator position is full on. I mean, that's all that position can do. There are also times of the year, if it's a full year position, that's not true. And that there are things that can be cycled into the workflow of this position that would be able to help the special education department as a whole. This position is under the direction of the special education director, who also has vested interest in making sure the out-of-district coordination goes well as well. And I think some of the things that you heard tonight, which, I feel badly about, but I think, to the extent that we had control over some of those things, was really kind of directly related to that turnover and that instability in that position that we've just had. Very directly related, because that position itself needs to develop relationships with the schools, with the parents, obviously, with understand and know the students, but when we don't have the consistency with the position and people in the position, that just doesn't happen. And we really have been scrambling the last couple of years to plug holes and to really just kind of just-in-time delivery, and sometimes we have not been just-in-time delivery. So it's been a challenging role. It's been a challenging set of responsibilities for us as a central office. We feel very much responsible for our out-of-district place students, our students who may be going in that direction. We want them to be connected to us. We want them to feel like they are part of who we are as a district. We have added them to our Parent Square communications, so parents who have students who are out of district should be receiving as a group. We send out any kind of district-wide messaging. We send to that group of families as well, so that they can feel, and know what's going on, because they're all our students. So I do hear and appreciate the comments. I know Dr. Alanama hears and appreciates the comments. I can just tell you that, Dr. Alanama has been busy with the special education director coverage role, and a major piece of that, which she's dragged me in, that I've been also involved in, as well as the sped supervisors, has been really trying to service our out-of-district families and the families that who have children who may be headed in that direction. And we have no question, from a resource standpoint, we just haven't had the resources to do that. So I think when we look at the full picture of our special education department, we now have a full-time out-of-district position, which was not full-time 2 years ago. Now we're talking about having that also have some responsibilities and around being an assistant director and more connected to the district. We've added a program supervisor, which is another administrative position that we did not have and did not exist. It doesn't exist yet. I mean, it starts June 21.
June 24th.
24.
Not that we're counting.
Not that we're counting, which, to kind of the WINPAC presentation, one of the biggest recommendations out of the language-based learning report was you need to hire someone to be in charge of the program. And we have had that advertised for a couple of years. And so it's a tough environment to hire in. We want to make sure we get the right people and the right fit for the positions. But in special education, you can't go too long without someone doing it. And, in some instances, we've been kind of piecemealing it. So for all those reasons, we've made this recommendation. I do understand and hear the concerns. And I think, most importantly, I just wanted to make the point that it is an out-of-district coordinator position. other things will happen later, hopefully. And, there's a lot of work to be done in that area. So we just wanted the flexibility to be able to get hopefully a larger pool. We think the title will help. It also gives us the opportunity for someone in that position when they get their feet planted and things settled, and the times of the year where they may not be as busy as the out-of-district coordinator, which we're not seeing in the foreseeable future, but certainly, hopefully, at some point next year, the opportunity to also have other responsibilities within the special education department. So that has been the rationale. You've had the job description for a couple weeks now. Marlena actually helped us and reviewed it as well. So we're hopeful that, and we did post this as anticipated, so we already do have a candidate pool that is far deeper than any pool we had for just the straight out-of-district coordinator role.
And Dr. Hackett, it does include DESE certification. There was a question about DESE certification.
Absolutely have
and
to be licensed.
As a special ed
As a special
administrator.
ed administrator, right.
Yeah, and the other piece I think that would be helpful to touch on is the part about our relationship with town meeting, and that the capacity building on the front end is what yields the reductions in out-of-district, hopefully, but we're not being driven by trying to cut money out of this. I mean, this is an obligation we have, but do you want to just touch on that?
No, I mean, well said. In coordination with the special ed director and the program supervisor that we'll have coming on board, this is a key leadership role in that team of 3 people who are focused on our special education population of kids, both in district and out of district. And, when we talked about the program supervisor, one of the many things we talked about, and WIMPAC has had this, that's been on their agenda, we've talked about, we're lacking in program descriptions, clear program descriptions, which is job one for our program supervisor. It's job one for our sped director, new sped director coming in. We need to make sure that people understand what our programs are and what our programs aren't, and what our programs can do, what the kind of the entry criteria, for lack of a better term, are, and what's the profile of students that we believe that we can serve very well in district. I think with that information, those communications, having someone to actually contact as a parent, to be able to talk to a program supervisor, to understand, and that point person on that puts us in such a better position, I think, to really help service our kids in district, because that's always the goal for us, as you know, and and the town has supported investments in our in-district programs. So it's a team of people and not just one person that will be working on this issue. And I just think it's what we've not had. And I am cautiously optimistic and excited about it.
Just to put a finer point on that, we're focused on meeting the students' needs in district if we can, if not out of district. And that's what drives us, not any of the
Not budget.
financial side. That's just an
Yeah.
output.
No, I mean, we absolutely. I don't think that has driven us. It has been, it certainly has been a topic of our budget conversations, because it has been coming out of the pandemic, consistent with other school systems in this country and across the Commonwealth. We have seen the increases, and understandably so. When we talk about abating, what we're really talking about is, I think that we are in a better place. I think people have a little bit more confidence in what's happening. I remember when we first came back from the hybrid remote, there wasn't, parents understandably weren't necessarily trusting that we were going to stay open. Remember those days? So I think, people made all kinds of decisions for their own family situation and their children. And I wasn't here during the remote hybrid, but I remember I was somewhere else, and I remember how difficult it was to service our students, and it was one of the biggest challenges and problems with how we were trying to do what we were trying to do at the time, and everyone just did the best they could. But I think there was certainly a residual effect of that, and but students we work with parents, we work with our teachers, we work with our staff to make sure that our students are serviced in place where they can be, and where they can get what they need. There are children we just will never be able to service in district, and that's what it should be for, that, we can, but for us to really know what we can do and what we can't do, for parents to understand what we can do and what we can't do, it should be a cleaner line. And I think that, I really do think with this leadership team that we will get there, and I think we'll see improvements that we want to see.
One last comment, which is just the 14% increase and the 6% increase, those are important to communicate to town meeting in order to get the funding to meet the needs to do the work that we're doing here. So just again, I know it was a concern, and when you hear it once, it's probably out there other times,
Yep.
but thank you for all that.
Well, it's, it has been a challenge because we never want to have any group of students stand out as part of our conversations publicly about our budget, or anything else for any other reason. But without question, we were feeling it from coming out of the pandemic, and then the 14% increase was significant to the total bottom line budget, and we had to explain that. I mean, there was no way around it, but hopefully we did that respectfully. And we have a community that supports, so there wasn't even a question about that. I think that, we're very fortunate to be here.
Including the fact that we maintain with the Select Board a special education reserve fund, so that if we do have any unexpected out-of-district costs or in-district costs for special education, that we do have that account that the town and the school committee and the Select Board committed to actually help us make sure that we can absolutely meet the needs of our kids, and it's not just a budget issue. We can never say we can't afford you.
Ever.
Yeah.
So,
Because we have a
legally
legal and
or
moral
just
obligation.
even, right,
Yeah.
ethically, right, thank you.
Mr. Nixon, you have been digging carefully through
Saw
your
me reach
budget
for my
line
budget
item
numbers.
and
You
calculating.
saw me pull out the calculator. So aside from the fact that all things being equal, families have told us for years they'd rather their kids be here in the district. And we made the case to FinCom years ago that if they would trust us, if you build it, they will come. Make real investments into our 4 specialized learning centers so that we could better support the needs of kids. That was so huge because before we made that investment, out-of-district tuition compromised over 9% of the total school district budget. I just did the math. It's under 5% for next year's budget that was just approved by town meeting. With what we had going into town meeting, we realized things can always change. So, I mean, it really, in some years, that figure has actually been cut in half. That's tremendous. So a significant.
By providing it in district, not by cutting.
Yes.
So we
I was
had-
going to just clarify that.
Because those kids were coming back into our district, which the kids and families were excited for. We were not paying those out-of-district tuitions, and we weren't paying those tuitions because we were making smarter investments with the support of Finance Committee in the staff and the resources so we could actually provide for these kids here. And a point I think I made 2 or 3 school committee meetings ago is that there is another consequence of that, which is, when you think about it this way, it makes sense and it's a good thing that the average out-of-district tuition is going up so sharply. And it's because, as a public district, I don't believe we'll ever be able to accommodate the needs of all of our kids, because some of those needs are just so specialized, right, and so acute. So it stands to reason that, and I think the numbers bear this out, that it's maybe for those lower or more moderate out-of-district tuitions for those kids that we were able to bring back into the district. That's great. But the consequence is that some of those higher tuitions for students that we're unable to accommodate, all that does is it increases the average out-of-district tuition. But if you just pause and remember, once upon a time, total tuition was over 9% of our budget. I mean, the legacy of this investment is tremendous. And it would not have happened without the leadership of FinCom, including somebody who's now on the select board. So I'm glad they're there because they haven't forgotten about this either. I mean, it requires care and feeding, right, in the budget. to
Yeah,
sustain those resources.
It's an upfront investment that you don't always necessarily know what's going to
Yes.
be the result of it.
Well, and at that time, Dr. Hackett, a question from some FinCom members was, how much money are we going to save next year if we make this investment? And the answer was, we can't tell you, and the savings may not come next year. It may take 2 or 3 years.
We actually received that question when we were advocating for the program supervisor's position as well.
And thank you to Michelle Pryor and her colleagues at the time who said, we're going to make the investment, because I believe it is paid off literally from a budget point of view. It's also paid off in the interest of students and families who would rather be here.
So with that, I would just bring us back to, we are looking to approve the Assistant Director of Special Education and Out-of-District Coordinator position.
And
Job
can I just put-
description.
Can I just,
Job description.
may I ask a question to put just a finer point on what Ms. Bergstrom said? The parent statement that Dr. Stott read, the question was, is there DESE certification required? We are requiring licensure for a special educator. Is there some other DESE certification that's relevant to this position we're not calling for that we could be? Or do we presume certification equals licensure?
The DESE used to call it certification, so I would
Okay.
think
One
that
and the
that's
same.
probably
Yeah,
part of
one
it.
in the
There's
same.
not a
kind of the
license
same.
specific to an out-of-district coordinator, if that's what you're asking.
I guess because this was the one question from Dr. Stott's statement, then I wrote it down as well. The
Yeah.
question was, is DESE certification required?
Yes.
Is there a DESE we're saying.
We're
licensure
requiring DESE certification, and it would be required,
Through
And-
the special ed.
As a special
special ed
education
administrator.
right? And the pools that we've had for out-of-district coordinators have been light on licensed applicants.
Okay. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
And Dr. Matthews?
Oh, he's coming back in here.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The vote is unanimous for the coordinator position.
Perfect, thank you. We appreciate the
Thank you.
support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are at 7:26 PM, and we are coming to finance and operations update from Mr. Marin, who's going to be talking on transportation and the food and nutrition services and a survey of the students and some IT, and among other topics, if you please.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. There's a lot of slides here. I'm going to cover the highlights of it, and feel free to jump in, or I can go deeper at the end on any of the topics here. We'll start on the finance side. There's a few updates listed here on kind of closing out this year, rolling into next fiscal year. A point that we want to start kind of the FY26, the kind of discussion around the budget calendar, the timeline itself, over the summer, so we'll kind of look to put that on a future agenda to review. On the new Lynch Elementary side, this Friday, the 14th at 2:30, we have our topping off ceremony. There's a photo here of some of the students signing that over at Parkhurst, a month or two back now, I think. They signed both sides, and we had some John Hancocks there taking us to good real estate. And then,
Have
Will
it
you
sign
be
the
able to
beam,
see
You're welcome
it?
to come sign the beam.
Or
Yeah,
is
so-
it all covered up?
yeah,
or-
during the summer, so we'll have the beam on site, some Sharpies in hand if anyone has not signed it yet, so members of this committee or the community. And then they'll have a process to raise it up, the flag and a tree on it, and put it into place. So,
And just a very naive question, but once it's in place and once the building is completed, are you still able to see this particular beam, or is it just all covered up and for
Yeah.
posterity?
Yep,
Like
yeah, it will
the-
be covered up.
Like
once-
VIA's 100-year
So,
Time capsule.
time capsule, yes, Oh, okay.
Yes.
But it's a part of the school?
Yep,
Like at the
it'll
heart.
be, yeah, it's part of the structure there,
Yep.
so it's.
Well,
Will be sprayed with cement or insulation or something?
we don't want to talk about what will happen to it. We
Okay.
know those names will live on forever.
They will be there forever.
Yes.
In the prior meeting, Dr. Hackett, I asked Mr. Marin if you were going to get some photographs, and you said yes before you put it up they were going to get some photographs of it, that they might be able to.
Yeah, we have it if it's current state, and we'll get some additional ones.
Awesome.
The
I love
final
that
signatures,
photograph.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's one right there.
Yep.
And then just note, we've started work with the Lynch team and the design team for the project on the review of furniture, fixtures, and equipment, known as FF&E. So it covers anything from furniture in the classrooms, the cafeterias, gym equipment, custodial needs. And so that's beginning now, having those discussions and kind of rolling over to next fall to ultimately have the final decisions in place that we're bringing in kind of equipment that, or, example furniture that they can sit on and try and test out. So that's all happening into next school year.
I was able to go to a couple of those sessions. It was like watching a child come down the stairs for Christmas morning. I mean, it was just, they were so, they can't even believe what they're going to be able to, I mean, the questions that they were asking, they can't even believe what they're going to be able to get. Like, they wouldn't even have dared to even ask the questions. And, I mean, they were so grateful, and they gave great feedback today.
This is staff, Dr.
This
Isaac?
is staff, yeah, this is staff. So Chrissy, the principal, had arranged for times during a rotation, and they were there all day long today. So it was fun to watch. It's getting closer, and you can just feel it. But
Candy shop.
they're ready. They are
That's
very
so
ready.
exciting.
Yeah.
Here's a few photos of current progress on Lynch. This is from last Monday through today.
What's the photo on the left, by the way?
I was wondering that too.
Is
What's that?
What's the photo on the left? Is that part
big
of the?
hole.
Is that
Oh,
part
yeah,
of
the left, as you
canopies,
can
or-
see, that's all the kind of conduit being run for security lines and electrical. So it's kind of where it comes into the building and then kind of goes back out to the MDF closets. And,
Oh, okay.
and let's see here. Yep. So this is a time-lapse video you can view. I'll kind of scroll through it. So this is the past maybe 8 months and 3 minutes here that goes through.
That's fun.
Is this on the website?
This is just on this slide. Yeah.
This would be
So
cool
scroll
for
through.
I
the,
was going to say it would be fun on the website.
Yeah, we could
Lynch
maybe put it on the
2025.
project site if we'd like.
Just pause it for a second.
Yep.
So, just also want to offer, I think those eastern white pines in the upper right-hand corner, are those the ones that are coming down, that were recommended by Concom?
I don't know.
I believe
I
that's
can
the
barely
area.
see the screen.
I think that's right. So the Conservation Commission has identified, I mean, after a lot of trees initially came down, there's been some secondary kind of review of the site, just concerned about some of these older trees that are exposed to the wind. So there is some additional landscape work that's going to be happening, like in one more batch, and then we're done.
I will say in the last couple of years, 2 of those mature white pines have fallen down in yards adjacent to us within about 2 houses. So there's a lot of these very tall, very old trees falling down. So as much as I like trees, I'm okay with these ones going.
I'll jump to transportation. So on the end of May, we opened up bus registration for next year. What's new this year is we did establish kind of a deadline for registering to help us better prepare as we roll into the next school year. So we've set that as August 2nd. Families to register, and it's all online. And we're available to support it through the email or call the transportation department. For next year, the fees for transportation to Lynch will continue to be waived. So that was this year and to next year. We have a goal of having the final assigned routes out to families the week of August 19th. Kind of a programming note, we are switching applications, so families will be familiar with BusRite this year and the prior year. We're moving to a new service called Easy Routing. There's a little more flexibility, some more features, introduces some components related to kind of calendaring. So we have families that we have a lot of after-school program use. You may be Tuesday, Thursday, school to home, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, school to WinRec. So now you can have that in here and know what we know. And we had to kind of track it offline before BusRite was not able to do that. And then some future growth options, maybe be able to register through this app and some cool things there. So,
I just also want to clarify that when Mr. Maron says the Transportation Department, you're looking at him.
The transportation
He is
department.
the transportation
Right,
department.
and supported
And
by
the
an admin
finance.
assistant who also does
Operations,
others.
transportation.
Right, I just,
Yeah.
it's kind of similar to HR. We hear HR department quite a bit, and,
Yep.
We're looking.
yeah.
Dr. Hackett assists the department every now and then,
I,
too. so.
I was assisting way too much last fall, so.
So what's on this next slide is kind of an idea that's out there. I think the committee in the past has spoken about this. So we're doing some researching related to multifunction school activity buses, known as that acronym there. So it's a program that's through, a regulation through the federal government that allows for this use. That's similar to the kind of traditional minibuses you may see, but does not have the components of the stop sign and the lights. So it's not an official school bus. So it can't be used for that home to school transportation, but it can be used for school to a place, so school to activity, school to a sport. And through the regulation, you only need a regular Class D license to drive it. So we're working on a few things, confirming with our insurer what requirements they may have in terms of our purchase of these, training for staff, and what checks we have to do for staff that may drive it. And then starting to get some initial quotes. So they have gas options, which are about $100,000 each, these buses. If you go electric, it's about $330,000 each, and that's not including infrastructure. And our budget overall for transportation athletics is just over $230,000 for FY25. The goal in researching, and we do a little more work to say if we carve out a certain sector of our athletics transportation and club transportation, can we repurpose that money? Will that pay for these types of buses? So we can do kind of a no interest kind of lease to own. So take that $100,000 over 3 years, pay it. And if we did something like 2 buses, does that equal what we're paying? Can we pay this off? Do we have some savings there? So that's what we're looking into now with partnership with the high school here and the athletics team or athletics director.
Mr. Maron, could that be used, I think you just said that it could be used not just for athletics, but also for clubs, for
Like Model UN.
Science Olympiad.
Exactly, yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so instead of anything we do now, we pay the same fee, and you have to take the large bus for 70 passengers, whether it's 10
Right.
folks or not. And it's, a paid bus driver to do that. And so that club, as long as it's a teacher in our district, a staff member, they could drive this if they meet our criteria and take the students to that club meet or that trip down the Cape or something, or whatever it is, so.
So I've appreciated this trend of your leadership that I've noticed over time of whenever there's a fossil fuel option to also look at the electric option, shifting the fleet of our one van, food service van, over to electric. So I think it's really important that we continue to do that whenever there's, even if there's a big delta like there is here. The one additional thing I think, and obviously the functions of this I think are also good. The potential savings of owning versus the bigger ones. The one other piece of data that would be great is if there are any federal incentives that we can apply to reduce the electric option, because maybe it may not make sense at one moment in time, but at another moment in time it will. And I think just continually asking the questions about what is the electric non-fossil fuel option and how can that become more affordable. Because soon it will be, and it'd be nice to be ahead of that curve. But I appreciate you doing that for all of these so far.
Yeah, thanks, that's a great point.
Can I just jump in with an observation as well? So when we updated our fuel-efficient vehicle policy, there was this one sentence in here, and I anticipated there would be a night like tonight, because the line says, with all things being equal, the town shall preferentially purchase or procure electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid, or other highly efficient vehicles. But what's not equal is the price. And that's always the case, right, is what does it cost? So if we're not in a position to go with electric for this, I would encourage the committee just sort of think about the way we've been doing it is we rely on the big yellow buses, right? For especially like for athletics transportation. So big bus, diesel spewing who knows what, that if we are able to at least right-size the actual transportation, not only from a financial point of view, if it makes sense for us, but getting the right size bus for the number of kids we have is, I would expect, still a step in the right direction in terms of our carbon footprint. Even if it's not electric, we're not polluting as much with something like this as some of these behemoths that are out there with 12 and 14 kids on it.
It's absolutely a good point. And the other thing you remind me is we should be looking at the total cost of ownership and operation of the fleet, because, repairs will come down and things
Yep.
like that as well. But I'm hoping that we're at that point soon. I'm hoping there may be incentives. We may not be there. And to your point, getting a lot of the benefit of the greater fuel efficiency by having a smaller vehicle, a more modern vehicle, maybe not a diesel, or whatever, is helpful, certainly. But I'm also hopeful that we can make the case that moving to electric will make sense in the near future, even if not today.
Mr. Mayor, and I was also going to ask about state grants. I know for a while there had been some money for districts around electric busing and things like that. So I'm wondering if that applies to this kind of vehicle, or if that's only the big yellow buses that it applies to.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. It's possible. I've just started reaching out to some folks.
Okay.
There was one program in the state that we reached out to and we don't qualify for.
Okay.
They're looking for more kind of smaller districts with more, different income needs. And so we're just at the ground level in terms of this is kind of the electrification of possibly these, and then our kind of general transportation program.
Right.
Looking at some items around that too.
And is there any interest on the part of the businesses that are selling these vehicles to create favorable lease terms around the more expensive electric vehicle, that it may take us longer to pay that off, but still not be a big budget impact? So is there?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something to look into. I know right now they said.
I know it's really early in your investigation, but I'd be curious to know if anyone
Look into
would
it.
be willing to work with us on that also.
Yeah, anyone I spoke to is around that 3-year mark. That's an interesting point, the electric route, so.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And just to make an obvious point, but range will be important.
Yeah, I was going to ask
For
about that
this.
too.
So
Yeah.
we're heading out to Mount Greylock, or we're headed to Springfield. We do want to make sure that we have a vehicle that is reliable in terms of getting.
And they don't have to sit and plug in for 30 minutes
don't
on
have
the
to-
way to get
correct,
there with
correct.
14 kids in the van.
Correct. Right.
Snack break.
And I also think we would be remiss in not recognizing that we have a vehicle for our athletic department. It's a Gator. I don't know, is it a Gator? Is that what they're
Golf
called?
cart.
Golf
Yeah,
cart.
the
It's
golf cart,
electric.
that's electric.
Yeah.
So that is
So
another
we've doubled our
vehicle
fleet.
within the fleet that we should
Electric
also,
vehicle.
Yeah, it's all good stuff.
I think it's good to reduce, if this comes to pass, then it's great as an opportunity to reduce the number of parents who are driving kids to
Right.
activities that are not necessarily athletics.
Right.
Also reduces our carbon footprint.
Yep.
Well, that's that's
Yeah.
that's the unsaid part of what I was
And
thinking.
and
So,
less idling. Less idling, less emissions.
Idling, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
And a good note, in looking through a lot of our trips, most of them are less than 20 miles where we're transporting students to neighboring districts. So it maybe sets up a good case for electric if we can make the economics work. But
Most of my
you
weekend
can-
trips are less than 20 miles too, for all
Yeah.
sorts of activities.
And you can just plug it into Lynch when you come back to town.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we may want to think as we go along, if we're going to move this way, about developing a policy alongside purchasing the vehicle so that we know who gets priority for use and how we prioritize use. Is it
Yep.
distance? Is it number of students? Is it, because if we're starting out with a small fleet, and it's always going to one particular sports team or one particular club, it would be nice to have a policy in place before we purchase that and start with that. So that might be something to work alongside the policy subcommittee as we do this, to make sure that it's equitable use too, and that it is the most efficient use of the vehicle.
That's a great point.
And on that note, can I just ask, so if something like this only requires a Class D Then I would also just, I'm looking at your last bullet, confirming with our insurer requirements. So, I mean, but there may be an additional cost, right? If we're going to have coaches or teachers drive this, our insurer may have some requirements for them, right?
Correct, yeah. Right now, initial talks is that, this cost to the actual insurance program that we are subscribed to. But it's more about how we do background checks on folks and their driving record, and having them go through a certain training before they operate the vehicle, and what they do before, or what do they do before they operate it, kind of a systems check of the vehicle, and that process and procedures where it kind of more kick to their risk management side, and what policies to procedures that we put into place.
So you've already explored the insurance issue question?
Yep, yeah, some initial conversations, and then there are some great schools in the state that have good programs running, and there's some policies out there and some of those
good.
training videos that we'd look to kind of review and build our own here. But we don't have to start from scratch. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Move on to favorite subject, information technology here.
Now my second favorite subject.
So I brought over a slide I've showed many times to this committee, just kind of tracking some progress, and highlighted some areas, some new items and some focuses for this year. But in '24, we made some good progress in upgrading some of our back end, kind of our ISP connections and some dedicated fiber. We moved some of our systems onto that, so we have a more consistent uptime. And we completed some upgrades to our phone system in terms of E911. So there's some changes in laws, and it's the Ray Bombs Act requires kind of dedicated lines for each phone. So it's kind of they call it a DID, a dedicated number. And so if you call 911 from that phone, it will identify which school and which classroom that phone is calling from. So it's additional information for public safety that they can communicate. So it was an unfunded mandate from the state, and so we've kind of planned towards that and implemented it all this year. So, and then going to next year, some continual projects around our infrastructure, wireless access point upgrades in McCall. We also have a focus on kind of fine tuning some of our systems, and we have a lot of applications in place, but how we make it easier for teachers or families to sign into these. So a focus on single sign-on. So we've already updated Munis, which is an internal system for logging in to do purchase orders. So that's all now single sign-on through our Google accounts. And looking to maybe implement this summer single sign-on for staff on Aspen, single sign-on for Windows tied to our Google's account, Talent Ed, which is an HR system.
I need a single sign-in for Aspen. I can never remember my password.
Yep. So coming soon.
That's just me.
And so I spoke to some of the summer projects. Let's see, we'll also be updating we've been having some issues with the main phone line, central office, some static for some folks calling in. It's kind of hit or miss. So we're upgrading that at the end of this month, actually, in our central office phones. And let's see here. Also some efforts around planning for Lynch. So working with our folks on the ITS side and a lot of volunteers from our teachers to test out Chromebooks and how they can incorporate that into their worlds. And also testing out digital touchscreens instead of having projectors in each classroom, kind of looking to standardize to these touchscreens. Would be kind of a touchscreen in the middle with two whiteboards on the side is right now the design plan for Lynch. And we purchased a few of these boards already that teachers are using in their classrooms. You'll see them in the media centers. And they're starting to develop PD around those and how to best use it. Quick update on childcare. So our Kids Pro programs, we typically had summer camp at Ambrose. And this year we also expanded to Vincent Owen due to some demand there. As you can see, Ambrose this summer is looking between 60 to 45 students each day, and with VO about 20 to 15. And I put on some numbers for enrollment, just kind of historical, and you can see where we're at for next year. Ambrose has had a lot of expansion to their program that's incorporating Lynch families as well. And then you see some consistency or some growth in the other schools. Morocco, we were able to find some additional space in the building to add some more capacity there. And I kind of want to encourage families, if they have not signed up yet, to register, and they may be put on a wait list in the short term. Then that allows Kidsborough to then go to the state, and so they can hire more staff. The state approves it in buckets of 13, because that's their ratio for staff to students. So once they see they have that 13 or anticipating it, then they can bring on other staff and add it there. So
Andrew, can you just clarify the FTE note compared to students?
so that's for their staffing.
So is that total at the two schools, or they have at one site 55 FTEs for 66 to 45 students?
I don't know if I.
You know what I'm asking?
Yep. You have to clarify if that's. So that's a note. It's all at Ambrose. I'm not sure if they. Yeah, it might be a typo there.
That-
It should be lower because it follows that same 1 to 13.
seems a little heavy.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll double check that there. And then just a note, so Kidsborough was our in-district program, and then we also, next year, we transport to those other programs in town through our bus routes.
Do we know how many students are on wait lists that weren't able to get into Kidsborough this year?
I think right now, I think we only have 4 on a wait list.
For this year, is that a question?
For this year or for
year.
next?
Year, yeah,
For this current year?
yeah.
I'm not sure, I don't have that number in
But
my head.
4
Any
on the wait
remain
list for next year.
For next year, yep.
Okay.
Do they, does Kidsborough cycle through the wait list? So as the little, I'll say, bucket of 13 students is met, then do students come off of the wait list? So I
Correct,
guess
yep.
has the wait list
Yeah.
decreased?
Yeah, I think if we did this update in early May, the wait list was much higher. It might have
Yep.
been
Oh, that's great.
15 for Lynch.
Yep.
And I think all 15 of those are off the wait list.
I think the big message that you're sending is if you
Sign up
have
early.
not signed up yet,
Yeah.
Get
and there's
onto the wait list.
consideration and you're worried about getting put on a wait list, please sign up because the wait list can disappear
Yep.
over time if the numbers are such that we can do that.
Yep, yeah. And now's the time that they can put out those,
Yeah.
try to attract people for filling the positions, and then the time to go to the state to get the additional approvals there.
Yep.
On to nutrition services, yeah. Nice, my other favorite topic. I'll go through it. Some program notes. It's interesting that we've had a large increase in participation. I think mostly it's helpful when breakfast and lunch is free. I think typically before COVID, it was less than 50%, around 40 to 45%, looking at some numbers. And now we're hovering around that 60% mark most days. And I noticed that the class 24 did have kind of special recognition, kind of dedicating the yearbook to the nutrition services team. It's a good sign to the program here, and some great staff here. I included, so we had in the spring, Whitson's ran a survey for their program, and we shared it through Parent Square. I found out we had the largest response out of any Whitson's district, which I thought was good. And so I linked here the kind of a presentation of that data and the raw survey data that has all the verbatim comments. Some trends in that, you can see some requests for better communication around program offerings and what options there may be, a focus on menu variety, options for maybe how to improve elementary meal quality, or the freshness, and then our use of local produce, or how do we communicate our use of local produce there. And so for next year, we have a few pilot programs we're going to be running. So I think exciting update at the high school, we're going to be replacing some old vending machines that are no longer working with some new modern vending machines that will allow students to pay through their My School Bucks balance. They can pay through digital payments of Apple Pay, or Google Pay, their phone or watch. And we're going to test it out with one refrigerated unit and one kind of dry unit. There'll be for snacks, and refrigerated could be for beverages or eventually cold sandwiches or any of that. We sent out in, I think, April, through the Dean of Students here, a survey to all students asking what they would like. So that chart on the right is kind of the overall summary of that. And so we can pick those items to start with and see how students respond to it. And so 2 more pilots would be, one is at Vincent Owen, we're looking to see how we can implement reusables instead of compostables. So there's a company out there that we're have some initial meetings with, again, some quotes. It's called Redish, and it's kind of it's a warewashing service where you can select a plate, and they come in, they drop off an inventory, and then they pick up the next day the used plates. And just kind of cycle through it. So it works well, I think, in the models where elementary, we have such a small footprint for our kitchens and serving lines that we can't fit a washing machine, a place to dry items. And we also don't have a place where we could centralize it in the district with the capacity that we would have. So we can test that out. And also at Morocco, looking to expand breakfast. And so if you look at the numbers of participation, lunch is very high, but breakfast is very low at the elementary level. I think we see higher numbers at McCall and the high school, but the elementary, it's harder. It's because we don't staff it. It's available, but I think we can do better in promoting it and kind of staffing it. So we're looking at try at Morocco next year, having someone that's there in the mornings to set up breakfast and offer it. And so it'd be from, maybe they're in 7:30 to 8:30 to cover that kind of entrance time. And so we're working with the school how to best kind of operate that. And with Whitson's, who would be responsible for kind of operating it and have staff in place. So right now the model is kind of items are available, but it's through the main office, and the principals are involved, and nursing is involved, and it's a little more complex.
Can I,
Yep.
is it okay if I just make a comment, observation here? On the high school vending machines, so I just have an observation to share. I'm not happy to share it, but it probably comes as no surprise. We have mice in the building here at Winchester High School. During our community meeting on the high school gym 2 or 3 weeks ago, saw 3 mice. I turned to Mr. Mahoney and I said, "Is that what I think it is?" There were 3 mice. And the answer is, and we've heard it before in some of our other schools, is it's a challenge when you've got a building where there's food, and real challenge like at elementary schools, food like winds up on the floor at snack time and so forth. That's what they're looking for. So I guess my first question was like, who owns the machines? Are we leasing them? Is Whitson's doing this? Like, what's the cash flow look like? But then the more I was thinking about it, does this not present a greater opportunity that students are going to be bringing food with them into class? And are we going to have more food on the floor in the building, or are these just to be used during the lunch hour? And if that's the expectation, are kids still eating lunch in the commons? It sounds like I'm going really deep on this, but I mean,
It does.
we have an issue here. I literally, I was afraid somebody was going to see the mice during the
I saw one in
gym.
Andrew's office just prior to this meeting. So, and I wonder.
Andrew, where are you eating your lunch?
Well,
He's been there before, to
he
be
called
fair.
911
Yeah.
immediately. There might be an issue at Lincoln, I've heard tell.
Hard tell.
I also wonder,
Witnessed.
Yeah.
if the construction at the MBTA is creating issues for us because of for the high school and for Lincoln, that can be a factor. Because I've never, not never.
Noise,
well,
vibration,
30
that
year.
kind of thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Interesting.
Because we didn't have this level of issue prior to this year.
Interesting.
So I think, to answer your question, we're going to try it, and I think we'll find out, but I think questions around how do we mitigate it, and where can kids take the food? I mean, I kind of
Yeah.
envision it as like, I've got an after-school activity, I'm going to get on the bus, I haven't had anything to eat, there's a sandwich in here, and I'm going to grab a sandwich, and I'm going to take it with me, but I think that becomes, as we go through it, we'll realize what some of the issues are, and if it starts to become like an administration issue, working with the high school administration, and, kind of where are the parameters that we might want to put on it. So it's a little bit of fire, ready, aim, I think, approach to see how this goes. I think it's a great idea because it just provides an open cafeteria for kids
Yeah,
all day.
yeah. I agree with you. I can see some unintended consequence of this, and should there be some guidance around what are expectations for students and teachers if they're using this? So, DPW isn't like spending extra time now, getting stuff out of the carpet or what have you.
I'm fairly skilled at it myself, and I have all I
I
can
would
do
say,
to not
Mr.
get
Nixon, if
involved,
kids
but-
wanted to eat in the classrooms, though, they can bring their own food in the classrooms now. They have backpacks at the high school, so, I mean, they could carry it around and
Told the
eat it.
backpacks are allowed here, yes.
So I'm just going to posit that that could be a problem already.
reason
that
why
the
we need
vending
backpacks.
machines- Yeah, But healthy choices.
Yes.
Make sure we,
And I just had two quick items. One is that for some kids, it's actually really helpful to have access to snacks during their day for a lot of reasons. But the other is, since there may be some little furry friends wandering around the buildings from time to time, I would ask that we not use the poison rat traps that are outside of buildings and stuff, because they're killing our raptors. Because the little, poisoned animal crawls off to die and gets, eaten by something. And so if it becomes an issue, that we find a different way to deal with it.
I don't know what we're using now.
I could get more information, like we do have reported, there's a state portal for our IPM, pest management plans, and all the chemicals we use or what we don't use.
I think Mr. Mahoney did tell me that that's part of the challenge, is they're very limited in what they can do to sort of trap and control for some of the reasons you just said.
Yeah.
And I could just add on the vending side, so yeah, is a pilot to see where it goes. The neat thing with these machines, so starting off, it's going to be kind of a la carte. So it's an item and you pay for it. In the future, there's capability of offering those reimbursable free meals. So if you came late and missed breakfast, you could get your free breakfast through this machine just by typing in your student ID and your PIN code. Or if you missed lunch, and it has to be there in certain hours, that kind of meets the state standards.
Right.
But that's a possibility there to offer those components. It'd be all the meal components that you need to get it for free through it, or to get a second meal on the go. So there's options there. It's that this one vendor only provides, and it's pretty neat. It's kind of unique to the K-12 space. And then a few more notes. So I mentioned reusables, the VL pilot. The new lunch design, the kitchen itself is going to have that washing equipment. And part of the FF&E would be purchasing those materials for serving trays and utensils related to that. And then we have to work on how do we staff that and manage it. And also doing just some investigating if it'd be possible to kind of upfit the McCall kitchen for washing components. If you're there, it looks like there was a time where that did happen. And so again, some rough quotes and for some future discussions around that.
I appreciate you thinking outside the box on compostables and the reusable dishes, because I know that we're challenged at our elementary schools by not having the space or the design to add washing machines. And I thought compostables was going to be our best effort there. So that's really cool to see that there's some clever companies out there taking advantages of our buildings' inability to do that. But again, the mice issue, do they seal them?
Well, I'm excited to see, I'm really interested in the redish, because I think that
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons, when you start adding up the cost of labor, of,
Right.
detergent, of running machine, how this plays,
Staffing, yeah.
staffing, how it plays out. But also, to your point, I mean, there are times when, because where we enter Lincoln to get into my office, it's, near the playground, that lower entrance. There have been times when the compostable trays have been stacked up and
Huge.
not picked up for a couple days.
Yep.
And there's no way that's not having an impact on
Our friends.
our friends. When I start to name them, that's when we have a problem.
Mickey,
Right,
you know.
right. I can't get too close to them, because then we trap them.
Yeah, I think as we get closer, I can get a little more detail, but it would be paired with them coming I think if we piloted it, it'd probably be every other day they would come to pick up. But
Yeah.
there's a process when you go to stack the plates, it's in kind of a milk crate box that's wrapped in a compostable bag. And at the end of the day, that's tied up, and it's brought to the kind of trash room, and then they pick it up.
Fascinating.
Yep. They don't pick it up in an electric van. It's not there yet, the economics, so I'm just going to get in front of the questions there.
They have everything.
Yep, so we thought through it. And then on compostables, so you saw the donation from the civic group at McCall. So they went and they raised $200 to go towards kind of our compostables and that program. And I put all the students' names here, and they met with us, and we talked through the program. And so next year, we're going to standardize to all compostable trays and forks and spoons and knives across the whole district. So it'll be no more styrofoam. And that's in our budget for next year, and it's the standard. So,
That's wonderful. More civic action.
Yep.
That is wonderful to hear.
yeah, so thanks to those eighth graders, I'm calling it, they kind of kickstarted the program here. I know we had a great presentation too, kind of the end of last year from
Yep.
some second or third graders.
Yep.
That's always been in the back of
That's
our
right.
minds, and how do we get to that point, so. And then looking to kind of pair that with expanding our composting programs. Right now, it's just at a couple of elementary schools, and how we get that back into the high school, into McCall, as we go through this. And then note on meal pricing, so we've not had an update to our meal prices, I think on the student side since 2016, from what I can tell. And DESE has certain requirements when we do our administrative review that we are behind on. So breakfast and lunch remain free for next year, but this would be for students that's second meal purchase, or for staff, it's not free and they purchase it. So what's on the screen is current prices for breakfast and lunch for students and staff, and then what the increase would be is 25 for 50 cents. So presenting this tonight, and then we'll come back to you to have it voted, maybe next meeting or this summer, however we do it. Facilities, safety and security, I run through it. So as mentioned previously, partnering with groups like WinPAC and DAC, Ms. Bergstrom has been helping out on our playground upgrades. We have kind of confirmed the main playground at Lynch Elementary, and we're still doing some work on the rear kind of community playground. And also working on Lincoln and that playground there. Currently, we're anticipating Lincoln possible install October, November, if we can get things confirmed. But the surfacing may have to be held off to spring of '25 due to kind of after the end of October, they don't recommend surfacing after that. And then Vincent Owen School, evaluating the surfacing replacement and quoting out what that would be for the playgrounds there.
And can you just clarify that? We're looking at the main playground, right? We're not currently looking at resurfacing on the K playground in the back.
Yep, I think it was evaluated from the consultant we had, but I think in terms of funding and budget, we would have available for just the main playground. Yep, and that's the one that is in worse condition with some really serious divots there and holes. So. And so thanks again just to the members of the DAC and WinPAC and some really great feedback and how to swap some items and make it more accessible and inclusive is the main goal there.
No ropes.
No ropes.
No
yeah,
ropes.
Yeah.
Not a rope in sight.
And on the security side, so we've had presentations before about, we went to the new standards this year for the SRP, Security Response Protocols through the I Love You Guys Foundation. Cameras have been installed, Call, Lincoln, Morocco. And we've brought the other schools that were on a different system kind of into the fold with the new systems, and we're now on one unified system throughout the district for that. And separately, we continue to make a lot of repairs and maintenance to our access control and alarm systems that kind of are failing at different points and becoming harder to manage. And then to that note is kind of on FY26 capital, some recommendation there and getting some numbers on what would be to replace those systems for all of our schools and to unify them to one platform there. And then two more notes and I'm done here. So we have another vehicle, our courier van that takes interoffice mail between buildings and town hall,
It died the day after you talked about it,
It did, yeah,
Sorry.
literally, yeah.
literally.
It knew
Uh,
there were
and
some bad
and,
thoughts
yeah.
coming.
Yeah, it also transports like technology and small equipment between buildings. So that did die. It's end of life. So we're using a backup vehicle from DPW for short term for just the mail components. And we had to rent some vehicles for kind of town day items from, the art department and music. So we've started renting those out. Some rough costs there that we'll include on our capital planning. And then note that the overall capital planning process is underway, meeting with facilities to review those items and develop that plan to present. So that's it from my end. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marin. You clearly cover so many, so you touch on so many aspects and operations in the district and our finance. So appreciate all of your work.
Thank you.
Now we will move on to consideration of approval of summer 2025 and the 2024-25 school year meeting dates. So this is a second view of the summer 2025 dates. We may have to take a little closer look at some of those dates.
Some late arriving vacation plans.
Yes. And then it's also a first look at the 2024-25 school year meeting dates for school committee.
So June 25th isn't on this list, but it's at the bottom of our agenda, so
Yes.
that's still happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
regular.
We call the new year, we go with the fiscal year start, so.
Yeah.
So we're just looking at these tonight, we're not voting this, we can move on? Or are we?
What'd you say,
I think,
Michelle?
given our kind of work that you and I, Karen, did today, going through and just looking at, I mean, I think we need to nail it down pretty soon.
I would agree.
What is the highlight?
So I would say some of the highlights are, so for August 8th, we need, or I think we have most of our members here, but we had one question about travel plans and travel, return to Boston times. August 27th, was that date still, that's the meeting date that we had based on plans, but then we were looking at the travel schedule today, and we have another member who might be returning that day, but I couldn't quite tell. And then we have our members who are in town.
I'm
whole
going
summer.
nowhere.
For which we're very
I'm
grateful.
going to live vicariously through you. I want to do a lot of Zoom meetings just to see where you are.
So if we could nail down the summer
I have some
meetings.
surgery this summer, but I'm going to schedule it so it doesn't impact school committee meetings.
So if we could nail down our summer meetings as early as possible, I think it would be preferable to be able to get there this evening, in my opinion.
I'm away on the 27th. That's the hardest one for me, but you only need 3 for a quorum, so you could meet without me.
27th is up for discussion, because we do have, we'll have 2 members out for sure, and then a member returning, but we just need to clarify. I mean, I'm not sure that you,
Back the day before.
You do come
Okay,
back the day
okay.
before. Okay.
So-
All right. We weren't sure of that.
so it would be 3 members present. One of the things I did mention to Karen today is, I mean, I don't know if there's anything necessarily magical about the 27th, and if we could just understand that, like, maybe the week of the 19th, if we had to deal with something, or we needed to vote on something, or, something unexpected, if we could, call a Zoom meeting just to do that, regardless of, schedules, that would be the only thing I'd be worried about, is if we had to take action on something, like an unexpected hire or something like that.
Or one example is, so capital will
Capital
do, capital planning will do its initial ranking the first week of August. There'll be some follow-up presentations, maybe a second ranking, second week of August. and we typically would be trying to finalize those recommendations by the third week. So if there should be some bubble project, meaning if there's some project that's just below the line, it's really important to the school committee that we need to discuss, or, meet with management or the select board or something to sort of get something over the hump, if you will. I mean, that kind of scenario could play out. It doesn't every year, but it has in the past.
Yep.
Does a date late in that third week, I don't have what people's availabilities are, but would the Thursday of that week prior to that,
The week of the,
would the 22nd of August work as a backup if
Um,
you needed to do a capital Zoom call
yeah, we'd have one member not available.
that whole week?
Yeah. My only point was if we really needed to do something like that.
Use Zoom.
Right, it would be Zoom,
Yeah.
and I think you all understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I don't think the 27th is magical in any kind of way. I think we could get school open and maybe meet on the 10th, that Tuesday, after school is open, if the 27th doesn't come together. I mean, it's,
So are you suggesting, Dr. Hackett, just to get to the end, do we just schedule the 18th and, July 18th and August 8th, and maybe leave a third August meeting TBD, depending on if we need it or not?
The week of the 19th.
Or the 27th, or whatever?
yeah, it could be any of those 2 weeks if we had to.
If we just have one meeting in July, one meeting in August, and then just leave
That encapsulates what I
a
was saying.
third meeting TBD,
Right.
take a date off
We have done
altogether.
that previously, in
Yep.
Yeah.
previous years. So,
Yeah.
okay, so.
And
a
doodle
two-
pull it out,
Yep.
based on need.
I mean, we could just get this offline from you and set the calendar, and then you could vote it at your next meeting, but I mean.
Right.
As long as we know, so that we can get it out there as to when we're gonna be meeting.
Do you want to just approve the first two dates, the July and August? I was saying, do you want to approve the first two dates, the July 18th and August 8th, and then doodle poll it out and figure out
Sure.
if there's another one that you want to do?
I mean, in the scenario I just gave, I mean, we don't know that that's going
I
to
mean,
play
as
out.
needed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we will know in August if that scenario is even necessary.
Right, and we have a meeting on the 8th.
Yeah, we have plenty of time to figure that
Yeah.
out.
All right, so if we are looking for the summer 2024-25 school committee dates, then I would take a motion for meetings on July 18th and August 8th, with a third meeting in the last 2 weeks of August as needed.
I'm okay with that, if you're happy just with
I was
consensus.
gonna say, I'm not sure we've ever
I
voted
don't know
the
if we need to
calendar
vote it, but
before.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But can I ask, I have another question for you, Dr. Hackett, and you, Mr. Mayor. And so in your slide, you were talking about encumbering, the last dollars of the fiscal year. And we, in some years, because we can by state law, we can prepay tuitions for the next fiscal year. The town certainly likes it when we have a reversion. So into the fiscal year, technically June 30th, but typically we have some time there for some journal entries. That can go 2, 3, I think it's gone into early August one year, I think. I would like us to have an understanding of what money is left on the table, and I would like us to talk about how, if we want to prepay tuitions, get your recommendation on that. And just want to be sure we leave time to do that. I mean, the meeting in August really would be too late, because I think if that's something we want to do, there's work to do in
When does-
communication with
When did
Stacy.
Stacy close last year?
Yes, the official close will be in mid-August, but we want to be done on our side by July 31st.
I mean, we're meeting pretty regularly right now, looking at our projections and trying to figure out, we would absolutely advise to prepay
Okay.
tuitions as much as we can.
Yep.
We've done that the last couple of years, and it's saved us in the following fiscal year. So, and you remember the presentation in the budget, we have some federal funding, that $849,000 that's going to be one time that we're going to use next year, that
Yep.
we're not using this year, so, and circuit breaker, of course. So, and I also think that, as things settle out with our out-of-districts too, we still have some, some potentials that are kind of in the air right now. So it's up to you as a committee, certainly. We'd be more than happy to come back and present that formally. I don't think because you vote the bottom line budget, you don't vote a line item budget that would necessarily need approval for that.
I think in the past, we have voted to prepay tuitions.
You haven't
I
since
was-
I've been here.
What's that?
You have not since I've been
Last
here.
time that we discussed it, I think, was in the
1920,
in the COVID year.
2021.
In the COVID year, 2021 or 2020.
Well, we had a rather heated discussion,
was,
as I
well,
recall,
it
with
was
the
over in
former
WinCam,
superintendent at the WinCam conference room
Yes.
about this, only because I think some decision, like time had expired to even have the conversation. Like, we were getting a presentation on the way it was going to be,
Yep.
if you follow.
Yep.
I think we have often had an end-of-the-year
Fiscal report.
fiscal report.
Right.
And then based on that, we've been able to make a decision based on the superintendent's recommendation about reversions or prepaying tuitions, et cetera.
And respecting what we may or may not have done since you've been here for many years,
Yep.
because it's a school committee budget, we have had a conversation about do we or don't we prepay, and therefore, what will we or won't we turn back to the town?
Yep.
It's the end of the year.
Right. And we're happy to do it any way you want. I'm just saying that from a authority, legal standpoint, because you do not vote a line item budget, we're staying within the bottom line budget. You don't need to approve it. If you want to approve it, certainly us giving you the information and letting you know where we are, absolutely we'll do that and have done that in the past as well.
Oh, I see. And is that the case because some would say you're taking an existing budget you've already approved and you're encumbering a portion of it for a future expense? It's not really a next fiscal year.
Correct.
I mean, it is a next fiscal year expense, but it's
But it's within the
It's a
bottom
debit.
line.
Within the
It's
bottom
a
line
debit in
budget
the current
we voted.
fiscal year.
Correct, Right.
Okay.
And I, however you want to do it,
I think I wonder what Ms. Bergstrom thinks, because she's been through this several times. I think it's good for us to talk about it. I think it gives the school committee a sensibility about
Yep.
what things cost, how much money there is, and frankly, gives us a platform we can talk about in the next budget development cycle. We have a presence of mind, if you will, about what we're turning back to the town and what we're not.
From a corporate perspective, I think it's generally a good practice to be able to talk about your actuals at the end of the year and how that might affect your planning going forward.
The only thing that I would say that gets a little tricky around the conversation is that we're, once again, talking about our district placement costs, right? So, because that really would be the only thing that we would be prepaying in any way that would be,
Yeah.
a bigger number.
Yep.
So, but, again, I mean, we can, and have been, we've been working hard to kind of see where we are and projecting out. We feel pretty confident about where we are right now and how we're going to end up the year. We could do something on the 25th even to give you some early estimates as to where we think we're going to be. So,
And like with a final understanding on the 18th of July.
yep, we could do that.
Okay.
Yep. I mean,
I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
And if things change with Stacy's timeline, we'll just have to, that might be a situation where
delayed.
we need a Zoom,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah, because things could change after that. The 18th, we're still paying out previous year and
right,
some factors there to consider. but-
trying to close out as many, all the purchase orders that we can close out right now. So, and I believe last year, I think we turned back around 4,000.
I think it was around 12 to
12.
13,000.
There's just no, yeah.
With respect to the 2024-25 school year, school committee meeting calendar, Dr. Hackett had input some comments on some of the different dates. And if you have some feedback today, then we could.
I just have a question for Dr. Hackett. There has been some conversation around this table around packets and availability of information and the challenges of doing that when our meetings are posted more towards the end of the week, and then it's a weekend, and we may not get stuff till Monday for a Tuesday meeting. And that might actually be better for the dissemination of information if we went on sort of a Monday to Friday week and held our meetings on Thursdays instead. Is that still something that would
Open
be?
to that. When we met on Thursday last time, it was just so much easier to get the stuff done. Because one, you're into the following week, so when we post on a Thursday or Friday, there are things that are still outstanding that we're trying to figure out or get done. The other option is we just don't put them on the agenda, right, and then we meet more, because that would be the result of that. We do the best we can, like tonight, and Andrew's presentation was on time for tonight, but we never put anything in front of you on the agenda that we're asking you to vote on without you having the materials ahead of time, right? So we're very careful about that, but I can tell you that having access to staff when we could post for a Thursday meeting on a Tuesday and having Monday, Tuesday in school with staff, it felt luxurious. I mean, we just were able to, because we're never done going into the weekend. There's always stuff that we're trying to nail down. So
Michelle,
I am wide open to that.
Were you just asking Michelle, like broader, like next year, regular meetings? Or are you asking,
Thursdays,
do we
yeah.
want to pivot to Thursdays?
Pivot to Thursdays
Yeah.
next year instead of Tuesdays. And there had been a time in town where I felt like our Tuesday meetings were sort of protected town-wide, but I'll note there are 5 town-wide meetings happening tonight on Tuesday. So I don't feel like people aren't, and this is not the first time it's happened.
Oh.
So I also don't feel like it's that there are so many groups in town now, so many, and meetings that the town needs to hold about playgrounds and,
Yep.
other projects, that I don't feel like these days are sort of protected for school committee anymore, town-wide either. So, if it's easier for us to get materials for the community, to see what the agenda is earlier so that they know what it is and we're not going over the weekend, I mean, I think it might be worth trying. Maybe we could try September to December on Thursdays and see how it goes for everyone. And if it's not any better, if it's not any worse, we
Well,
can
and just
decide
like
what to do
Thursday
then.
was always our fallback option, if there was a
Right.
Tuesday
Right.
problem, we
Right.
could just flip it, and Tuesday could
It's
be
the
a
backup.
fallback if
Backup
Thursday
Right.
doesn't
Right.
work.
Right.
Right.
I'd love to try it.
I'm on board with that.
That sounds interesting.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so
So not to
we'll
upset the
revamp.
whole apple cart, but can we move these to Thursdays?
again, we actually had that built out a little while ago.
Have you had any conversation with Dr. Matthews about this?
Not for Thursdays, no.
Okay.
So should we connect with him and
Yes.
come back
Yeah.
at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely take
So
care
what
of that.
right. So we're
And
good.
the time still works for everyone, too?
Because all your comments will have to change, too.
The 6 PM.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just shift.
I honestly wish we would go back to 7, but I know people don't like to stick around till 11 o'clock at night, so.
I personally
Not
love
excite
it.
I seem to recall you
And we are
talking about
getting to
meetings
8:27.
until 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our executive sessions were standing meetings, because we literally stood in the superintendent's office.
Well, we're at 8:27 PM.
Yeah. I'm good
Yep.
with
Sure,
6. I
He's running a
just,
tight ship here.
Okay. All right, and I guess if there are any other, so we'll try the Thursday, 6 PM option with the Tuesday as a backup from September through December and see how we go. And maybe we will change the rest of the calendar.
And that'll be Tuesday of the following week.
Say that again?
That'll be Tuesday of the following week. Instead of backing up the 2 days before.
yeah,
Okay,
we got it.
Right.
I just thought it'd be funny.
okay. I think that blitzed over my head, but that's okay.
We'll do it sooner.
And then I guess we'll update this, speak with Dr. Matthews, and then we'll come back to this on June 25th. Okay. Let me just find my notes.
You plug in my
Let's
USB.
see. So next we have a school facilities project update. Mr. Dixon had submitted a memo from Capitol on May 28th. He has provided a second memo from today, but this is also hot off the presses information because last night EFPBC had had its meeting, so this is just getting to school committee the most recent information, most up to date.
That's right, yeah, no action tonight, just trying to keep you guys updated because things are happening on a lot of different fronts. What I thought I might do, just very quickly, this is the memo you had at our last meeting that I believe I briefly touched on, so I guess what I might just do is ask if people have questions about anything, please, pipe up and ask. The McCall piece is pretty straightforward. You even saw some pictures of the work. We did speak to the architect last week. There are a few punch list items that we have to work through, but it's largely complete, which is great. On the Lincoln Elementary School chiller project, you'll remember, was it December or January? We had a school committee meeting in the high school up on the stage. John Fallon came, Pete Lawson came to kind of present these different options to the school committee. To remind everybody, that one of the two chillers at Lincoln failed actually, almost 4 years ago now, I think, at least 3 years ago. So air conditioning is on borrowed time. I believe it was 2.5 years ago, the school committee sponsored a capital request from DPW to do that conceptual study of options at Lincoln. That was $60,000. That was funded. Took a while for, I guess, the town to advertise that and get somebody under contract, but they did. That conceptual report came out last spring-ish, right? April, May, Andrew? So that was the report, you'll remember, had 2 options on the roof, 2 options on the ground. We talked about that conceptually. We talked about how if it needed to go on the ground, there would be some space impact for that and some costs for that. Some of us sort of voiced a preference to put it on the roof if we could, but that was something that needed to be evaluated. So we had a meeting, I think it was in May, with management and with DPW, and it's not clear to me how much work had actually sort of been done since that January meeting, but the message that we've heard and what this memo kind of articulates is that right now the ground-based option is on hold. They are evaluating the structural capacity of the roof and the dunnage system, and they're spending a little more, engineers spending a little more time, and they have funding for this, to get a little more sort of deliberate about what a roof-based system would look like in terms of the piping and be sure they have the costs and everything. What is new since this memo that we had in your packet for the last school committee meeting, and I'll ask Dr. Hackett to jump in if I get this wrong, we've learned there is a sort of separate freestanding air conditioning system for certain spaces at Lincoln, including Dr. Hackett's office. And I believe as recently as a week ago, there was a request to evaluate replacement of that system, which I don't think anybody at this table was really aware of. So although the structural evaluation is going on to figure out whether we go ground-based or roof-based, right, for the systems that have already been evaluated, there does appear to be an interest in some additional cooling scope at Lincoln. And I think we look forward to having those conversations with DPW in the next week or two to understand what this means. Some have sort of posited it might make sense to maybe just take a step back and evaluate the entire HVAC system at Lincoln as opposed to maybe responding to a piece of equipment that's failed, right? So what is the total system? How is the total system doing? It's 24 years old this summer, about. Is there something else we should be looking at as part of a, bigger project? So, yeah, like I said, things can change. The Lincoln site work, flat work project, that remains kind of shovel-ready. It's going to cost a little more this year than it did last year just because of the cost of escalation. You have a link there to the video in case anybody wants to watch it, but I know you're pretty familiar with that. Then on the Ambrose and McCall roof projects, I wanted to remind the committee that at 2023 Fall Town Meeting, we did approve funds for design and engineering for roof repair and replacement at Ambrose and at McCall. And so this is just the design piece. So this is not to deal with the actual construction itself. So $80,000 for Ambrose and $240,000 for McCall. What I can share with you, this is in the memo that you just got today, which I'm sure not everybody has had a chance to review. So we've got confirmation that the 90% design package for both Ambrose and McCall is actually expected on Friday, July 19th to the town. But what's important about that is that's actually a day after our July 18th meeting. And we'll talk about capital timeline and sequence here in a few minutes, but if you remember from last summer, there were multiple sort of parties that were interested in roof work at Ambrose and McCall. So the select board was interested in it, engineering and planning and DPW were interested in it. I think our expectation this year is DPW and management is going to have to be advocating for this work with capital for the simple reason that we won't have detailed scope and cost information for the school committee to even consider how this would rank in our overall priorities, because we just won't have it in time. But management will get it. They will review it with Andrew and with DPW. There's a review period. I'll talk about this in a few more minutes, but I wanted you to know that work is very much ongoing, but it's not going to arrive in time for us. And we're making that clear to management. We're not saying we're disinterested in the work, but we're not really in a position to prioritize something if we don't have a handle on what the scope and the real cost is. And I'm presuming there's agreement on that, but that's sort of our approach right now. I think on the high school gym, we continue to plug away. I think I'd reviewed those dates with you at the last meeting. We're getting input from the town clerk on what she needs to run elections. WinCam is a part of the process. They're sharing with us their telecommunications and power needs since they broadcast games and special events. I'm going to ask Andrew, so I don't mess up his machine. Can we jump to the memo we just shared today? And then this is a shorter memo, but this is literally late breaking sort of stuff. Okay, so first, to give you guys an overview.
We lost you.
Sorry. So just a quick overview of the summer capital process. Thank you. So Capital Planning Committee, as you know, gets very busy over the summer. Our first, we're going to hold 4 meetings on consecutive Wednesdays to hear the departmental requests. So we're going to start on Wednesday, July 10th. And in conversation with Capital leadership, what they'd really like us to be ready to present the school priorities on July 24th. We could present as late as July 31st, but our goal is to present on July 24th. So at our meeting on June 25th, where we already know it's going to be primarily about the collaborative, what Dr. Hackett and Mr. Marin and I are planning to do is share with you guys kind of some draft 3- and 5-year CapEx planning that Mr. Marin has been doing a great job on to give the committee a sense of what is coming. They're not going to be specific project priorities on the 25th, but just to give you all a sense of what's coming and certainly answer any questions that you may have. And then I think for the meeting that comes on July 18th, we will absolutely be able to provide you with information in advance that by that point will be familiar to you on a number of potential projects and recommendations that are coming from administration. So what I want to just underscore to everybody is that our plan right now is to give you a high-level introduction on June 25th, and that we would really like to actually be voting priorities at our meeting on July 18th. So there's a decent amount of time between the two. However, there's no school committee meeting in between. So if there are questions, they should be coming to Dr. Hackett, Mr. Marin, and myself. I think we will work really hard to get you a lot of information well in advance of the meeting. If we are voting priorities on July 18th, that gives us just enough time to actually then kind of package those requests for capital. So there's some administrative work that's required at Town Hall in terms of how we present this, mostly work for Andrew. So for us to make the 24th, we need to be voting on the 18th. And if, however, the school committee should not be comfortable for whatever reason voting on the 18th, remember, we could still be presenting to capital on the 31st. The issue is we have to find a meeting. So if we can't reach an agreement on the 18th, we need to basically have a meeting the following week, which, could be over Zoom. I don't see why not. So I wanted to throw that out there to you guys. With respect to the McCall and Ambrose roof information that I was just mentioning, this is going to come to the town on Friday, the 19th. There's going to be a review period of a week or two, some Q&A. There will be a rough project estimate, but it's not final. And so I'm not expecting really that we'll have truly tight numbers until much later in August. But when that information comes in and we have a sense of cost, we will be sure to let you know. And then the really late-breaking news is on the high school. So last night, the EFPBC met. We authorized SGH, who's our forensic structures engineer, to go ahead and proceed to develop plans and specs to do 2 mock-ups, what they call mock-ups here at the high school. We're not really building anything new, but it's sort of it's a treatment mock-up. They have identified 2 areas here at the high school of 100 square feet each, 1 in each wing, where they're going to have a contractor come in and power wash the area and surface apply a corrosion inhibitor. There are 2 different products they've identified. The chemistry of this is absolutely proven in the lab. So the purpose of this mock-up is to actually apply it to the concrete, and then you wait 30 days, and we hope that it will be absorbed into the concrete at a certain depth or more. And you don't know that it has until you wait 30 days, you come back and you take cores of the concrete, and you take it back to the lab, and you evaluate it. So if this surface-applied corrosion inhibitor penetrates at the depth that we hope that it will, again, based on the concrete spec we had in 1970, it should work, then there's a real high degree of confidence that we could apply this corrosion inhibitor on the underside of the first floor slab and get much more protection. It's like an insurance policy to help mitigate, well, first of all, stop corrosion that's happening now that's really attributed to the moisture that's down there. It's like an insurance policy for a building that we put $129 million into. This does not deal with the topside contamination and failures that are happening in a few selected areas. To remind the committee, that's happening because of chloride contamination, literally salts. That's a different animal with a different solution that's actually less costly. If this proves to be successful, the construction cost for applying this on the underside of the whole first floor slab is over $500,000. So with that kind of money, we obviously wanted to be sure it's actually going to work. So anyway, this is what we authorized last night. We've given the green light. They're going to have a contractor here in this building, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. The scope of the work is there for you. You can read it later if you like. We'll do 3 cores in each of the 2 mock-ups and send it off to the lab. And then there's a little schedule there as well. Once the work gets done, unfortunately, we do have to wait 30 days, and then you send it off for testing. So what's sort of important about this as it pertains to our discussions around capital priorities is if you look at the top, 10 weeks from yesterday is like August 19th. So this is after we've ranked capital projects. This is also, frankly, after capital will have ranked priorities. So capital is aware of all of this. It may mean that if this mock-up is successful, this may be more of a spring town meeting request, again, if it even gets through capital. Alternatively, if this committee wants to, we don't need to make this decision tonight, we can provide you with some more information on what the costs are. We have some pretty detailed costs for the concrete repair and remediation here, both the underside treatment and also fixing the topside stuff, so the hallways and where the carpet has swelled in the guidance department. We have that information. One thing this committee may want to consider is thinking about that as a capital ask, but with an asterisk, which is it's contingent on favorable results from the lab testing after we do this treatment. That's just an idea. Because obviously the sooner we act, the more effective it's going to be, rather than waiting a year because we continue to have some rusting and spalling of the rebar in the concrete. So this is the kind of thing you don't want to dwell on too long. So there's a lot of detail there for you, but the EFPBC unanimously supported this last night. And so SGH is off and running, pulling the plans and specs together, and they've notified the contractor. Then the last comment is on the Mystic School Heating and Ventilation Project. As I think some of you are aware, there was a presentation to the Select Board on Monday, June 3rd, with a little bit different information than what was in my memo to you on May 28th. So the engineer stated to the board that they had been asked, what can we do for around $900,000? I presume that's ARPA funding. It wasn't stated explicitly, but I think that's the case. So they came up with a couple of different options. They're very similar options for Mystic. But interestingly, it's not really the full project cost. So for the work that they have proposed, Pete Lawson did recommend Monday night that the board consider funding it at $1.2 million. So what I would describe to you, that this latest concept is that what Mr. Lawson has described is all of the challenges they've had with the steam piping at Mystic. I think we heard about the various failures, the pinhole leaks, and having to send folks out early in the morning. This is old piping. It's wrapped in asbestos, so before they can really fix it, they have to close valves, they have to abate this insulation, so that's a specialized trade, right? So it's expensive and it's time-consuming before they can even begin to make the repair. What this proposal, and I did the whole school committee get it, Dr. Hackett? Because town manager sent something out Friday.
I think so.
Before this meeting. So I think we all have a copy of this. This is a unique approach. What they're suggesting they do is that apparently the vast majority, if not all, of the piping problems at Mystic are in the original 1923 piping. So remember, Mystic was built in 23, but then there was a three-part addition in, I think, the early 1940s. So it's just the original Mystic where the pipes are sort of falling apart. So the engineer has proposed not to tear out any piping, but to basically put in some valves, close them so they can isolate that piping, and then to provide to the occupants of the original 1923 building basically a split system, a heat pump system, variable refrigerant flow system that will give them reliable heat and air conditioning, and that will basically eliminate all these service calls from DPW. But what's interesting is, I think we all remember, I think the urgency around this, as I recall, months ago, was from rec. Those upper-level classrooms in the addition, particularly those that go up into the hill, are very cold in the morning, even when the system is, quote, working. So what was presented to the board on June 3rd does not physically provide any supplemental heating infrastructure. So this is a question we have. We want to be sure that those who were most desperately asking for heat are getting it. And also the proposal from the engineer, it turns out that there are some areas of the building closest to Main Street that they're proposing to close off the piping and provide heat pumps, but those are spaces that actually are part of the addition. So if you're not familiar, if you stand on Main Street and you look at what we think of as the old building, like where the Kids Corner entrance is, many people will think of it that way, there's a door that's sort of in the middle of the building. But in fact, everything to the left of the door is part of the addition. When Mystic opened in 1923, that door was on like the edge of the building. So there's quite a lot of space there that was built long after 1923. And so I think we need to have just some conversations with the engineer about whether the scope that they're presenting is sort of in line with those, expectations around shutting off the old piping, only because it's a lot of money. My last comment would be, and you can watch this on WinCam if you want to go back and watch the meeting. It was about 45 minutes between presentation and Q&A. One member, there were certainly a couple of members of the board that were expressing concern about just the cost, because it was a lot higher than what they were expecting. There was a member of the board that also acknowledged, well, the chair said, this needs to come to the school committee because it's the school committee building. So I think there's an expectation for school committee approval. Another board member even suggested the school committee might want to talk about our interest and priority for this in the context of other capital projects. But my understanding is this would be funded through ARPA.
I don't think they have that much left.
But whatever, if you, whatever dollars you're not spending in ARPA are dollars that are available for other things, eligible for ARPA. And as we remember, there's a clock to this, right? I mean, you have to spend the money by a certain date. So I'm sorry if this was a little long-winded. There are just a lot of things in play. And I think the town manager has been in contact with you, Dr. Hackett, about bringing this to us. And I think your recommendation, which I like, is maybe we have a joint meeting, because our plate is full for June 25th and July 18th. It seems there's real urgency on the part of the town manager to get going on this, but there actually are still a lot of questions about it. And the work that the engineer has done it's very conceptual at this time. So they had good questions at the board table. And in fact, they specifically said, has the school committee seen this? And of course, I mean, we got it by email, but we haven't had a presentation or anything. So we're going to try to find a way to have some offline meetings with them soon.
Any notion of the timeline on a joint meeting, or is?
Not on the joint meeting, but I will tell you, the town manager is what she said on the board on the 3rd was she was really hoping to get the project going this fall. There's some doubt amongst the members of the board that this could possibly be done in time for the heating season. The engineer said he would need 4 to 6 weeks to complete his bid documents. You'd need 4 weeks to bid the job. There would most likely be an electrical filed sub-bid, and he envisions 3 months worth of work. And another finer point here, the recommendation at this stage is a ceiling-based system, meaning the air handler in the spaces would be like a ceiling cassette. And we have asbestos mastic in the ceilings. And so they've acknowledged that there would be some significant hazardous material abatement. I think they're allowing $150,000 for that. But this isn't work you do while Kids Corner is off on a field trip. I mean, this would actually mean they'd have to vacate the building for, it's all the things we were concerned about, right, when we last talked about this. So it seems like it would be tight, really, to get this done in time for the heating season. My sense is there were a couple of board members who are still looking for a much more modest proposal that provides supplemental heat to the spaces that we know need it for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. I think it was Mr. Betancourt actually mentioned this is a building we will be looking at in the master plan. And if we're going to say, yeah, we want the building we have and we're going to be committed to it for the next 10 years, that's one thing. But, we might actually come to a different conclusion. And do we want to see $1.2 million go into a building that we may only occupy for 2 more years? So just some important questions and conversations to be had. But I think what we're trying to do is circle back with DPW and the engineer to ask a bunch of questions, get answers before we have that joint meeting. But to your question on timing, I don't know, but I agree with Dr. Hackett, a joint meeting is the way to go.
Okay. All right. Well, then we will circle back on that joint meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We are at 8:50.
can I just ask one thing?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I want to make sure. On the July 18th is the date that you're hoping that we vote on stuff. To the extent that, I know we don't have a meeting in between the June 25th and July 18th, but if you can put together one of your reports a week or so before then, it would be like a light meeting. We could read it and we could maybe reach out to you or to whoever Dr. Hackett or the appropriate people. It might be a way for us to reduce the risk of not coming to
Right.
And I believe you've done that in previous years.
I think a really important part of that is actually, Andrew is doing a great job just working on kind of a multi-year CapEx plan, which does not have to be, we shouldn't, when we see it, it doesn't need to be funded exclusively through the Building or Capital Stabilization Fund, right? So it's literally like a capital spending plan. But that'll include some of the things that you've already touched on in your presentation tonight, technology issues, building security, phones and so forth. So that's really the meat of it, Mr. Hopcroft, is just to kind of see, so what are those things that are out there? And I think Andrew's doing a good job kind of putting that together. And we have some preliminary cost estimates for it as well.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thank you for the detailed update. We appreciate it. I will move us to future meeting dates. We have June 25th at 9:30 a.m. on the schedule, and based on the result of our conversation about the first couple of summer meetings, I'll just add in that we have July 18th at 10 a.m. as a virtual meeting, and then August 8th at 10 a.m. as a virtual meeting. And then moving along to future agenda items, I'll just make note of a few that I've taken note of, with capital planning and prioritization on July 18th. I guess with a discussion, an opening discussion on June 25th. Consideration of a fee increase for second meal fees with Mr. Marin for the next meeting. An end-of-the-year financials report. And then, as well, looking ahead, we're in the season for our evaluation for the superintendent. And I would like to place the summative evaluation on August 8th. And so I would like to aim for July 18th to have Dr. Hackett provide us with his self-evaluation. And then have July 31st as submission of, or as a date for individual committee members to submit your evaluations. And then I will take these and compile and consolidate the individual evaluations into one for presentation of the summative evaluation on August 8th. And I'll provide a memo and some materials about the process, about the evaluation process and the timeline in advance of our June 25th meeting. So please be on the lookout.
Only
Any
thing I would add to your
questions?
list is, it seems like there's agreement, it would just prepayment of tuitions would be maybe a part of that end-of-year
It was
financial.
part of the, and I just didn't
Yeah.
say it, but
Yeah.
yes.
And Mr. Nixon, you previously asked for a fees discussion, too.
Say that again?
A fees discussion.
Yes, and I think what we said last time was, I mean, if we're not raising fees, fees are staying the same.
Right.
So I almost mentioned it tonight and I didn't because obviously the clock ticks.
And we're not raising fees, and fees stay the same.
I was thinking for the next year. Like, if we're going to start talking
Yeah.
about it for the next year, we should probably add that to our agenda or figure out a way to
Oh.
build that in.
Oh, you mean like.
So
in
we
the-
don't end up where we were this year at the end of the year, saying we were going to have a fees discussion, but we never had a fees discussion.
Yes, and that can include the bigger topics like do we or don't we do tiered fees and, you know,
Right.
how do we structure, yes, yeah, okay, totally agree with you. That's a good one.
That may be at the finance subcommittee level as a start.
I don't think it needs to be finance subcommittee level.
We shall see.
You can just, I don't know that it should be, but that's just my own inclination.
Otherwise, we also have several items that are on our list already. The elementary literacy student presentation and findings, subcommittee updates. We have the Student Opportunity Act Plan, which is some required state paperwork, and we'll bring that to you on June 25th. And then student activity account funds for the class of 2021 account. Any other items?
No, but I've been trying to figure out how to capture this, so I'm going to throw it back to you. It would be nice if our agendas also had future meeting dates for subcommittees that we sit on. So EFPBC, Capital, Finance Subcommittee, Curriculum Subcommittee, so that other committee members know when those meetings are happening in case they would like to attend, or community members also know if they're interested in the school committee adjacent meetings that we're a part of and making decisions on. Not sure how to capture that on these agendas every month, but I just wanted to throw that out there, that there's a better way for us to share that.
Just thinking about our town website, so, but, okay.
Well, amongst ourselves, though.
No,
It's
I
things
know-
that
I
are
know what you're
specific to
saying. Yeah.
school committee.
I know what you're saying.
It's hard to pull
So-
that out sometimes.
So for anybody who's interested, our next EFPBC meeting is on the
There you go.
17th, and last night we agreed we would also meet on July 8th. Summer is a little squishy because vacations and stuff, so we're only kind of planning our meetings 2 and 3 out at a time.
What did we decide? The 8th, sorry.
July 18th and August
No.
8th for us.
The
Oh, for
FPBC,
EFPBC.
the 8th, and what was the other date?
I think he just said June 17th.
Thought we agreed on the 22nd.
22nd, okay. All
Right.
right, that's what I had.
With all of that, then I would accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Matthews still with us?
He
No,
he
he-
dropped
Okay.
off a while ago.
It's not 9 o'clock yet.